This live stream is brought to you by Arcweave. One of your biggest challenges as a dungeon master is unfolding your campaign's long and complex narrative. It sounds hard, but Arcweave can help. With Arcweave, you can use diagrams to design complex and branching stories. Visualize your narrative's flow in as much detail as you need. Fill it with encounters, adventures, and weave all your subplots. Create visual references to components like NPCs or magic items, and easily access them from anywhere in your project. Keep your flow simple by breaking your diagrams down to separate boards, and use folders to keep them organized. Collaborate in real time with colleagues working on the same project, and even test and rehearse your story's flow in the play mode. Your job is not easy, but Arcweave can help. See the link below for more information.
All right, we're here now. You ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
Well, we're not starting yet. This is the starting soon screen.
Yes, I'm ready to go.
All right, sweet. Well, Penguin Butt and Goliath Cleric are in the chat. Burning M, what's up, dude? 1, 2, 3, 4, Uchi. Nixit, what's up, man? Omega Zero. What's that?
They say I'm echoing.
You have reverb?
That's what they're saying.
All right, let me think this through. Why would you have an echo? Something is picking you up twice.
Just me.
Mm-hmm. Okay, talk a little bit. And, oh wait, that's not gonna be good.
Okay.
I'm looking at the audio mixer in OBS. That's not doing anything for me. But Ed is only transmitting his Zoom to me. That's the only thing he's transmitting to me. Okay, hold on a second. Let me go into Windows sound settings. This might and then I want to look at advanced sound settings, but it doesn't actually show me what's where. Oh, Zoom meeting. Yeah. Okay. That comes back to that. I've done this before and I've never had an echo from the person on the other end. Oh, wait a second. Ed.
Yes.
Do you have the stream running on your computer?
No.
The stream is not running on your computer.
I have the chat.
The stream itself is not running.
Mm-hmm.
You only have the one mic, right? Like you don't have any other mic, a boom mic, anything else, a video mic? Like your webcam doesn't have a mic on it?
It does, but it's not set up to run. Let me check the Zoom settings.
They're saying that if you... Go ahead.
Zoom says that it's going in through my headphones.
Okay. Can you open up your browsers and double check that it's not running? The stream's not running. But if the stream were running on his computer, it would be broadcasting an echo for me too. So that doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, mute your headphone mic and then talk. Okay, so I couldn't hear anything. Did stream hear anything from Ed? Did you guys hear Ed say anything? Nothing. Okay, so that wasn't it. Okay, let's do this. Ed, leave Zoom and come back on. Just close the Zoom meeting and then rejoin it and see if that does anything. This is fun. I've done this many times before, and I've never had an echo issue, so... No, the only, well, hold on a second. Let me see what OBS is picking up. Audio. No. Desktop audio. Ooh, hold on a second. Okay, I just did something in OBS. All right, Ed, you with us? I can't hear you though.
Yes.
Okay, I can hear Ed. How are we doing on the echo? Ed, can you talk a little bit?
Yes, I can talk. What do you want me to talk about? It looks like it's good based on chat.
Cool. I'm gonna do something really quick to confirm if it was what I did or if the Zoom was it. So let's do something. I'm gonna go to default again and apply. I want to test out a theory I have. Okay, now talk, Ed. Say something. Tell us about your lasagna.
My lasagna was really good. It was double meat. I like double meat lasagna. I'm not a big fan of vegetarian lasagna. I need dead animal flesh.
Okay, is he
preferably
echoing?
in a ground state.
Okay, all right, that's good. Thank you. You're echoing. Which, oh jeez, don't do that. Don't be dumb. Don't be dumb, Luke. All right, I figured out what it was. It was an OBS. I had the desktop audio was getting picked up and my Go XLR audio was getting picked up. So when I disabled it, and it was just picking up my Go XLR, which also grabs audio from the desktop. Okay, now, Ed, tell us about your lasagna.
It was a double meat lasagna. I need ground dead animal flesh, no vegetarian lasagna for me.
Thank you. No echo? Was the echo sorted? Was the echo okay? Fixed? Okay, cool.
Fixed.
Yay, we figured out what the problem was. It was me and OBS. Whee! All right, I'm gonna get a cup of coffee because it's empty right now, and then we're gonna start. All right, and me starting is gonna involve me talking a bunch, and then we'll get into the Q&A. All right, let's roll this. All right, ladies and gentlemen, hello, welcome to the live stream. I am joined here tonight by, oh, shoot, I should probably show you the wonderful dude. Hey, look at this. This is Ed Robinson. He is the lead developer for all things Lair, DM Lair Publications, Lair Magazine. You did Into the Fae work too, lead developer on that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and then obviously with the new Kickstarter, Layers and Legends, both of those books, all that content. So yeah, so he is the dude for our publications. And tonight he is going to be joining us for Q&A. We're going to have a fun little talk about Thaco the Clown. I've been looking forward to this. I've been meaning to say something about it, but never quite got around it. But Ed has some strong feelings about it too. So we're gonna approach the topic rationally as calm human beings and see where that leads us. So we'll be doing that tonight. But before we get into all of that, I have some wonderful shameless plugs to do. And I'll just go back to my full camera so that Ed is not implicated in these shameless plugs. I wouldn't want to like, you know, dirty your good name. So, all right, first thing. Okay, so do a Q&A. What are we doing? Oh, we have charity, our new charity. Oh, we have a new charity. Yes, we have a new charity. Stand by. I'm going to show you our new charity. Well, I mean, it's a charity that we've given to before, but we got up to like $800 and some for the last charity. And so now it's time to pick a new charity. And so the charity this time is going to be the Capital Area Humane Society. We have donated to them before. They're a humane society here close to where I live. They help dogs and cats. They have a free, it's not free, but it's a very low cost spay and neuter clinic. One of the things, I took a tour at their facility recently, and one of the things that they do is they actually get dogs from high kill shelters down south, and they take them from down south up here to where I live in Michigan, and then they get them adopted. So it's, you know, they're trucking them in and they're finding them and trucking them in and stuff and getting them adopted. So it's really, really awesome. So very, very cool people. All tips, 100% of all tips go to the Capital Area Humane Society. And our goal is to raise $500 for these folks, and then we donate to them. That's how that works. So that is our charity of choice now. Anybody who'd like to donate is very, very welcome to do so. And then, yes, we gotta do that. Tonight, as you guys may have seen at the very beginning of the video, we do have a sponsor for this video. It is sponsored by Arcweave, and I'll talk about them a little bit later too and give you some more details about them. But the giveaway tonight is going to be a 1-year pro subscription to Arcweave. And Arcweave is a browser-based platform that helps you plan out your D&D campaigns, the plot lines, the narratives. You can organize your NPCs, you can organize magic items, and lots of cool stuff. One of my team members we only sponsor things, we only accept sponsored videos and stuff for things that we actually think are high quality and would help our viewers. And so I had one of our team members evaluate the program, and he said that it was actually pretty cool, and he was probably going to use it to help him prep for his own games. So that tells me that it's probably a pretty decent thing. So anyway, the giveaway tonight is going to be a 1-year pro subscription to Arcweave. So there's a giveaway link in the chat right there. You can sign up for that and get out on that. Goliath Cleric is saying that he loves Arcweave. He was the one that evaluated it for me, and he's like, Luke, it's really cool. So anyway, one person's gonna get a 1-year subscription to that in the giveaway. So join the giveaway. I will tell you more about Arcweave and have some nice little photos and stuff a little bit later. But anyway, we got that going on tonight, and then I think we're gonna go into our shameless plugs. It's actually not a shameless plug. It's actually it's a thank you. It's a thank you moment to all of our wonderful patrons and YouTube members. So you guys some of you probably know that we create tons and tons of free content for Dungeon Masters. Obviously, we have the videos, we have these live streams where we answer your questions and try to help you with your specific situations. We have tons of free resources on the dmlair.com, 100% free stuff, puzzles, traps, adventures, NPCs, new monsters, lots of cool stuff, 100% free that you can use in your games. And also we have our premium content, which is Lair Magazine, that we publish every month to my patrons. And my patrons and YouTube members help support all of that, help make it all possible. So I'm very, very appreciative to them. And a bunch of names on the screen here, very, very cool folk. And the next set of names here are, whoops, that's not it. Here we go. These patrons here support at a higher level, and so they get their names read off. So here we go. And I actually have bigger text now on my screen, so I might be able to read these a little bit better than I have historically. 5e Magic Shop, Aerospatial, Alex H, Alex T, Amanda W, Ambers, Andrew M, Andre U, Andy S, Andy W, Anthony M, Antoine B, Arutha Baldwin, Benjamin B, Blinking Duck, Brad A, Brandon A, Celestina K, Chase O, Chris C, Chris E, Cody B, Colton T, Connor A, Contrary Gravy, Corey S, Damage Dice, Draxus Dresna, Dutch, Ed R, that's who's sitting here with us tonight, Ed R, Edward L, Ericos, Philip H, Flame Black 20, 2,200, something like it's a number. Frog, Goliath Claire, Gravy Chorn, Goromunder H, Ian F, Iron Lord 79, It's Bailbon, Izzy T, Jacob S, Jake L, Jacob K, James L, Jen K, Jens K, Jeremy W, Jessica J, JM, Joel L, John A, Joseph H, John S, Justin P, KLS, KK, Keith L, Kevin F, Kevin O, Kezides, Kirby, Kyle G, Kyle M, Labroworks, Leopold X92, Lionheart, Ludwig B, Marwin R, Melinda G, Mr. Lina Kanu, Mr. T, Neo, Nikita S, Owen D, Paul H, Penguin Butt, Pierre P, published author, Radiance Guardians, Ramus, Reslick, Race W, Renner C, Rob M, Robert C, Robin O, Ron R, Ronald, Ryan, Sakura, Scott F, Shane L, Snapragger, Snowy Tiggy, Son of Sofa Man, Soul Naya, Status Alive, Stephen T, Steve D, Stephen A, Tattle Tokens, Talking Napkin, The Three Quarters Hospital, The Old DM, The Pickle, The Casual Nerd, The New Bad Hombre, Thomas T, Tiger 500, Tim Black, Tom C, Tony M, Traveling Cash, Tristan W, Tyler R, Vincent G, William M, XX Red Drum, and Zoot Suits. I am amazing. I got through the list. Haha. Haha. Okay, anyway, thank you so much, my patrons. I really appreciate it. And I think that's all of my stuff. We talked about the charity. We talked about the giveaway tonight. So, all right, Ed, we're ready to rock and roll, dude.
Awesome.
Yeah. How's it going, man?
It's going pretty good. Playing a lot of D&D right now.
Oh, yeah. Imagine that.
A lot of D&D.
So we... Oh, go ahead.
4 games running. I got 4 games running right now on a regular basis, and pick up games here and there. Not counting the one I play in. So...
Yeah, that doesn't count. All you gotta do is show up, right?
Yep. and make incredibly stupid choices.
Hey, I love that. That's what I love about our game, is the stupid choices that make interesting things happen. Yeah. So I mentioned before that you're a lead developer for Lair Magazine and stuff like that. So just tell us a little bit about you, your background in the hobby, and then transition into what you do now for Lair Magazine and stuff like that.
Okay, super short background because it's a really long one. I started playing original D&D, the white box, in 1977. I got my first set in 1980. That was actually mine. That was Home's Basic set, and I played every edition so far. Basic, AD&D, 2nd edition, 3rd edition, and 5th edition. I don't know why there was never a 4th edition, but, people make weird choices. And so I'm an old timer, but I love 5th edition, which is opposed to most old timers. I kind of like both. So I'm not a grognard. I'm not like one of those people that only plays old school Renaissance stuff and complains about 5e. I love 5e. I basically, for Lair Magazine and the website and everything, every single thing that comes in, whether it's for the website or the magazine or a Kickstarter or whatever, I review all of it. I look for game balance. I look for rule mechanics. I go through all the stat blocks and make sure that everything is organized correctly and looks right and all the math is done right. And most of the time, I don't screw up and have to and have the editors find things I missed most of the time. It happens occasionally. But so that basically anything that is mechanics or game balance, any of that kind of stuff, that's what I do.
Awesome. That's sweet, dude. I love that too, because I know when we were doing Into the Fae, I was doing all that stuff and writing it all and getting it ready and stuff, and then I had you take a look, and you're like, "Yeah, Luke, there's just a few things about these stat blocks you might want to change." And I was like, "Holy crap, man!" And yeah, it's just the thing is that, you know, the things that you check are like the things that, even if you're good, like it's so easy to like goof stuff up, you know, and do the calculations wrong, or just forget about, oh yeah, there's a thing called the adventure day mechanic. Yeah, we should probably not have like, you know, too many encounters and stuff. So, you know, digging into the details like that and knowing the game rules and knowing how things are supposed to work, you know, is super, super valuable, you know. So
yeah, a lot of people, a lot of the problems are little things like people not knowing how to calculate certain things because they're just they're taking their best guess. Like when you're calculating damage dice and hit dice and that kind of stuff, you always use the number that half plus 0.5 and then round down. So if it's 2d6, it's 7 because it's 3.5 plus 3.5. 3d6 is 10 because it's 3.5 times 3 rounded down. And a lot of times it's that's like probably the most common thing I fix is that people either forget to put the 0.5 in or they round up instead of down. I mean, that's the single most common problem. But a lot of it is just experience. You know, I started making new monsters as soon as I got a hold of 5th edition. My first ones were awful, and I've just kept making them until I found the way to balance them. And I mean, every single monster we get or NPC stat block we get, I check the challenge rating 3 different ways before I settle on a final challenge rating for it. So there's a lot of that that goes into it.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. I'm so appreciative of all that work you do, man. You have no idea.
I love it. I really do.
How did you start doing that for us? Because like, I know you at one point you became a moderator for us and stuff, but when did you get plugged into doing that for all of our publications? Like, how did that happen?
Well, it started off with the Kickstarter. I was playtesting the Kickstarter and I was just a playtester, but I sent a lot of comments in about game mechanics in the Kickstarter, a lot of comments in about the stat blocks, more comments about the stat blocks. After you change the stat blocks, I put in even more comments about the stat blocks. And the magic items, you know, the magic items, I pointed out the rapier of dancing, I think, was one of the big ones because there already is a sword of dancing in the DMG.
But it's a rapier. It's a rapier, Ed.
It's still a sword, man. I got one. I got one in the back room. I used to fence, so I have a beautiful $500 rapier in the back room. But then I started writing for the magazine. I did. I think the first thing that I did for you was puzzles.
Yeah, it was. I remember that. I used one of those puzzles. It was really cool. It was some dwarven thing. Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, and then I started doing other stuff, and I think that you had Sunny or Danny at one point send me some monsters to check on because you didn't think they were right, and you just asked me to check on them, and I did. And then after I did that a few times, I got like half the magazine, and then I think issue 6 or 7 was my first one where I got half the book. And then after I read through that one, I'm like, okay, these are all the things that are wrong because I didn't get these articles. You just gave me the articles with like hard mechanics, and I found like 3 or 4 things that were wrong, and I told you, which was a mistake because now I get everything.
At some point, like, I have a horrible memory, you know, so like I can't remember all these details and stuff, but yeah, I'm sure at some point, you know, either it was my idea or I don't know, it might have been Sunny or Danny or somebody else, you know, that's on our team that was like, hey Luke, you know, Ed's really good at this. Do you think it would be good for him to just review everything? So like somebody had that idea. I don't know who it was, but yeah, I'm sure. And then it was like, yeah, that's actually a great idea. We should have him do that.
Yep.
So that's awesome.
I enjoy it. I love the mechanics of the game. I make a lot of house rules and I throw out a lot of house rules because I've played so many editions of the game that I know what I like from each edition. So whenever a new edition comes out and I start playing it, some of that stuff is going to migrate in. And when I first started playing 5e, I put a lot of that stuff in, and most of it has gone away now because I've realized that it worked for older editions, but it doesn't work as well for 5e.
Yeah.
Some of it's still there. My resurrection rules are a lot less kind than the ones in standard D&D.
That's not hard to accomplish.
I hate counterspell, so I did away with it and put in my spell dueling rules.
I hate counterspell too. It kills my fun as a dungeon master when the player is just counterspelling everything. I hate it. I'll do things like put 2 spellcasters in the encounter because I actually want to play the game. And a spellcaster introduces like so much more interesting things into an encounter than if you just have people swinging swords and doing physical damage. And when you neutralize that spellcaster, the combats get more boring and predictable. And so I think counterspell is just a really crappy thing. So I agree. I don't like it.
You'll notice in a lot of the monsters that I create for the magazine and for the monsters that I just throw at you and say, here, use this however you want to sometimes. I like to put in multiple combat options that aren't spells because I don't play a lot of spellcasters except for clerics. I love clerics, but I don't like arcane spellcasters with the exception of bards. So it's not something I enjoy playing as a player, and I don't use a lot of them as villains because of things like counterspell and that kind of stuff. It's a lot. I find it a lot more entertaining for the players to have to figure out their way around somebody who has multiple modes of attack and that do different things. So I have a lot of those types of monsters that I use. But when I use a spellcaster, I normally have like 5 different spellcasting plans before the game even starts. And I'm like, this is what they'll do in round 1, unless this happens. And I try to come up with that for at least the first 3 rounds, so I don't have to worry about it in the moment. Because spellcasting it doesn't come naturally for me like it does for some people.
I do the exact same thing. When I'm running a spellcaster, at least the spellcasters for important encounters, because some encounters are just throwaways, But if it's an important encounter, especially a boss fight, I'll do the same thing. I'll have, usually it's the first 3 rounds. These are the spells that I plan on casting. Now, you go a step further and you plan out alternative strategies if X, Y, and Z happens. I really just have one strategy. It's like, I'm going to lead with what I'll usually do is I'll be like, this is my plan. And then what I'll do is I'll take usually all of the spells that are listed on their spells that they can cast, like at least half of them are pretty much worthless and you're never going to use those. And so what I'll do is I'll create a separate list that just has the spells that they're most likely to use in an encounter. So then I have like my happy path of I'll cast these if I can, and then I'll just have my boiled down list of spells that are actually going to be useful. That way it just makes it easier for me to like pick, on the fly if I need to.
Yeah, people like Jeremy Crawford and Mike Shea, the lazy from Sly Flourish, will tell you that you should not spend more than a half an hour planning for every hour or 2 hours of game. My wife will tell you that my philosophy is plan 2 hours for every half hour of game. I love planning, I really do, and I have much like a lot of introverted nerds, I have depression. I have clinical depression that I take low medication for because I find other ways to deal with it. But if I'm not planning a game, that's when my depression hits. So if I start to feel down, I'll just pull out my D&D books and start flipping through them and try to figure out, how I can use this monster, how I can use that monster.
Yeah.
Because planning is my anti-drug, as the old commercials used to say. So for me, I love to overplan. So
it's like if you plan too much, the only situation in which that's actually going to be a negative thing is if you try to force it down your players and stick to it and don't allow them to deviate from your plan. But as long as you're open-minded and are willing to just let it go if it doesn't happen, planning a lot is never going to hurt you because you're ready for that many more things that might happen, So as long as you don't have that, concrete mentality set in stone, because I planned it, it's going to happen. As long as you're able to let go of that, then planning too much can never hurt you.
you know.
This past Sunday, my players were fighting an incarnate gloom from Tome of Beasts 2, I think, and they had first found this thing in the attic of an orphanage. So I expected them to go to the orphanage, and I have a lot of terrain. I love terrain. I built out the entire orphanage in terrain, like all the different levels in the attic and all this stuff. And they ended up doing research and finding out where it had come into the world and fighting it in like a town square instead of the orphanage.
Oh, nice.
So I had to build a town square real quick on the table for them. Because I had built the entire orphanage because I expected them to fight it there. So I don't railroad, but my idea, I like to think of it as a reverse railroad. I try to think of every single thing my players could possibly do and plan for it, and then when they surprise me, I'm really surprised.
Yeah,
but a lot of these guys I've been playing with for 20 years, you know. So I can predict them.
Yeah, that almost sounds more like a sandbox, like a true sandbox, where you have planned out all of these different things that they might possibly do, and then you allow them to just do something, and then you're ready for it. You know what I mean? As opposed to a lot of people think a sandbox is I don't prep anything and I wing everything and I make it up on the fly. That's not a sandbox. That's you not prepping and just winging stuff. That's all that is.
Yeah, exactly. And I will. My main game right now, they're doing a revolution. They're like rebelling against this evil king, and for a while they were being given missions by the leader of the rebellion, and even then they would wander off and do other things on the way to the rebellion. I just kept time moving, so they knew that there was a time period. But recently they've gotten to like level 8 or 9, and I've said, okay, you guys are running the rebellion now. You plan it. You tell me what you want to do. And my wife, who is my note taker, has a list on Google Drive of all of the dangling plot threads and all the things that they could possibly do for the rebellion, and I just check that and plan around it because I know eventually they're going to do some of it.
Yeah, she's like helping you with your planning and stuff. Yeah.
Oh, she always does. Without even knowing. She doesn't know what's going to happen, but she's helping me plan all the time because I'll ask her, what happened, in this adventure that I didn't take notes on and you did, and she'll tell me. And
yeah,
it's nice having the note taker living in the same house as me.
That's awesome. Give me a hot second. It sounds like our giveaway link is wrong, so I am fixing that really quick. You can talk about something if you'd like while I.
Okay, I'm going to answer this question in chat.
Okay.
That Goliath Cleric asked because I told him to, and I'm gonna mark it as answered so that we get a timestamp on it.
Beautiful.
And it is Ed. What's your favorite monster? Yes, I did this to make sure that you got it in there. My favorite monster right now is the Grekti. If you've never heard of the Grekti, that's because I made them up. And if you want to learn about the Grekti, you should get onto Luke's Patreon because they will be appearing in a future issue of Lair magazine.
Yeah, they're awesome. I was like,
they are a limbo monster, and they're awesome. And I have art for them that's fantastic, and hopefully we'll be able to get it in the magazine too. And so yeah, that's the way to do it. If you want to learn about them, back to Patreon.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Real quick, the giveaway link should be working now if you want to post a new one. And then, you know what? I need to make sure in like YouTube I have it right too. I am smart. All right.
That's okay.
Oh no, it's not gonna be changed there. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Okay, let's see.
That's funny.
I got another question. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, it's funny because you were telling me about how do you say that? Geki?
Grekti.
Grekti.
Grecti.
Grekti. I'm just gonna say it wrong every time. You were telling me about the Grekti, and you're like, oh yeah, I have this idea for these Grekti, and they're a limbo-based monster, and I was like, oh, that sounds really cool, sweet. And I was looking at our schedule for Lair magazine, and I was like, well,
July. It looks like we can do that in July because we already have content planned out and in process. And then I was like, can you do this for like levels 17, 18, and 19 or 18, 19, and 20? And then you were like, yeah, we could do that. And then what was the boss, like the Grekti Lord or whatever it is, the demigod type thing is like, what is it, a CR29, I think you said?
Yeah. Kolavar is a CR29, basically demigod. So we got 18, 19, and 20 in good shape.
Yeah.
Goliath just has to actually write a level 18, 19, and 20 adventure now with it.
Okay.
Good luck, Zack.
Good luck, Zack. Yeah, that'll get assigned to him. Well, he gets all of our, like, every time we do an adventure arc where there are like 3 adventures tied together, you know what I mean? He's the guy for that. He's the dude. So we always give that to him. Yeah. All right, we're gonna talk about our giveaway sponsor really quick here, folks. And then we are going to get back into the Q&A. So I gotta do this little thing right there. Boom. All right, beautiful. Okay, so tonight's sponsor for the live stream is Arcweave, and the giveaway winner for the night is going to get an 1-year pro subscription to Arcweave. So one of the tasks the DM has to do is planning their campaign, designing the campaign. You have interweaving plot lines, adventures, NPCs, you have plot hooks, and Arcweave is designed to help you with that. It helps you design your campaign, your adventures, your storyline. You can visualize your campaign's narrative flow, and you can add as much detail as you want: plots, subplots, adventures, NPCs, and monsters. You can create visual references for magic items, NPCs, whatever you need to create. And you can have separate boards and folders to keep your diagrams and DM notes organized. Another feature of Arcweave is that you can collaborate real time with other dungeon masters like co-DMs and other game designers as well. I had mentioned this before, but one of my team members really liked this and has started using it for everything they designed for Lair magazine. So very, very solid program. And it's also used by companies like Microsoft and Amazon, which is interesting. I don't know what they do with it, but apparently they find it useful. So anyway, you can check out Arcweave at the link below, and you can join the giveaway for a chance to win a 1-year pro subscription. All right, and now we're going to go back into our questions. Oh, you had one, didn't you, from the sheet?
I got a second one in here that asked me if I was any relation to David. I assume it's David the Admiral Robinson. Not the Admiral David Robinson, because I've never heard of Admiral David Robinson. But I am not. I wish I was related to David Robinson, the Admiral, because maybe I could get some of his money. He is a professional basketball player, and we are not related.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Let me mark that one as answered. There we go.
Sweet. By the way, we had a couple super chats. Dream Cream, thank you for the $5 super chat. Really pick that. Appreciate that. And he says it's because Ed is being picked up on both his new. He's giving us suggestions for your feedback and stuff when we're having the echo problem. So thank you, Dream Cream. Appreciate the super chat and the advice. We apparently ignored you until we got it fixed on our own, but I do appreciate that.
Sorry.
Also, we have a super chat from Nasamu. Thank you so much for the $10, dude. Appreciate that. Nasamu's question is, my PCs just rescued some villagers from some orcs and are being chased. How would you run this? So they rescued some villagers from orcs that are being chased by the orcs. How would you run it? Some of the PCs have exhaustion level 1. That doesn't really do a whole lot, but there are 8 orcs, 1 chief, and 1 shaman, also not long rested for 24 hours, and they haven't long rested, so they're probably depleted in resources and trying to make a giveaway. How would you run that? All right, Ed, I'll give you first crack at that.
Okay, the first thing I would do is not use the Wizards of the Coast chase rules, because they're not great, and the exhaustion won't affect them at all.
Yeah.
So what I would do is I would run it as the one good thing that ever came out of 4th edition. I would run it as a skill challenge, and I would have it be a 6 success skill challenge where the PCs had to succeed 6 times before they failed 3 times. The win condition that would be that they escaped. If they got the 3 failures, it would mean that some of the orcs caught up with them at the end, but not all of them, like one advanced force that they had to fight in order to escape. Otherwise, because then the skill rolls would be at disadvantage because they have exhaustion. So that would make it a lot more challenging of a chase instead of just using the Wizards of the Coast rules that exhaustion wouldn't affect at all. You'd also want to consider the fact that they are trying to get villagers away. So maybe if they failed 3 of the skill checks, they still escape, but they lose some of the villagers to the orcs. You can have a number of different different levels of fail results based on whether they failed 1, 2, or 3 of the checks by the time they got 6 successes. So that's how I do it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's my answer too. I'm not quite as familiar with the 4th edition skill check system. I've heard of it several times, and I just kind of wing it because I do skill challenges as well. This is probably the first time I've heard it explained where you have 6 successes and 3 failures, though. And I like the concept of 3 failures doesn't mean you fail necessarily, but it does mean there are for sure consequences. So
yeah. Basically the way it worked in 4th edition is that skill challenges, the difficulty of the challenge was how many successes you had to get. It was almost always 3 failures.
Okay.
And if you, like the 6th success, for example, if you're being chased and one character will say, I want to use athletics because I can move really fast that way. The next person would say that they want to use, survival to find the best route. And nobody can use the same skill twice. They can use a skill that someone else has used, but they can't use a skill they've used. And I limit it so they can't use the same skill in the same round at all. So they have to be more creative. But if they get the 6 successes before they get any failures, they succeed absolutely. If they get 1 or 2 failures, there's some level of consequence when they get to 6 successes. If they get 3 failures, the skill challenge ends. They still succeed in making the escape, but there's some huge consequence for it. And one of the things is I used it once for a cave-in. They were in a mine and the cave was caving in. And I know that I don't want to end the adventure with them all dying in a cave-in. So they're going to escape the cave-in, but for every failure they got, when they got out of the cave-in, they took a certain amount of damage or something to represent the fact that it's that cinematic leaping out of the cave at the last minute, just as everything collapses.
Right.
So it's a great system, and the standard I believe is 6 successes, 3 failures. But I have used the biggest one I've ever used was a 12 success, 3 failure one.
Wow. And
they managed to pull it off, which was really annoying for me because I had a really cool idea for 3 failures. But awesome. 6 successes is standard, and it's a really good system for resolving things where you know you want the players to succeed, but you want there to be consequences if they don't do well.
Right. So, yeah, totally agree. Now, in this situation, like I've used these skill challenges before with my players, and one of the things that I almost always get is like a player will be like, I want to shoot my bow at them. I want to shoot an arrow at them, So how do you let's pretend you have orcs that are chasing you in this situation, and one of the players is like, as I'm running away, I'm turning around and I'm shooting arrows at them to slow them down. Like how would you resolve that as far as like skill checks? Because here they want to make an attack roll, basically.
I would let them use the attack roll as their skill, because they can only do it once. So they would be using it as part of the skill challenge, and instead of the armor class, it would be a difficulty. Just like everything else. When I set up a skill challenge, I'll normally have an idea of what the average difficulty is, and then if a player is really creative, I'll give them a lower difficulty, or if they come up with something really good, or if they come up with something that's really lazy, or I don't really see it working, I'll raise the difficulty. So what I would say is, if the standard difficulty was 15, I would have them make an attack roll against 15, and if they made that, they'd be pinging arrows back to slow the orcs down. Yeah. And it would count as a success.
Gotcha. Okay. And then if they had something that's never gonna work, like I'm gonna start a fire in the shrubbery, and the orcs are just gonna run around it or something, then that difficulty might be a 20 for it to actually work or something.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. That makes sense. That actually makes that skill check challenge system make a whole lot more sense in my brain, because up until now I've just heard of it and I've just been kind of doing something, but I've never actually read the system from 4th edition. I don't even own anything from 4th edition.
I don't either.
Oh.
I learned about it. I learned about it way back when I was watching Matt Colville on a regular basis,
Okay.
and he has a video about it.
Okay.
And I took his video and then adapted it to my own tastes, and I've just been running skill challenges like that ever since.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I've been intending to like actually read into that rule set and maybe do a video out on or something, because it's something I use and I think it's super useful. And it kind of goes back to what you said too about the 5th edition rule set for chases is just absolutely horrible. I was at a table once where we were about to do a chase scene, and the dungeon master he's my friend Joe. He plays in Curse of Strahd now. And he literally was like, you know what, 5th edition, I think he was the dungeon master for it. He's like, you know what, 5th edition actually has a rule set for chases, and we've been playing for a while, and he's like, let's try to use them. And so he opens up the DMG and we start going through it and stuff, and obviously it takes forever to like read it and figure out and do it, because you only do chase scenes like once every 2 years, and so you're rusty at the rule set for it. And then I don't know, it was a combination of it feeling clunky and also a combination of us never using the rule set and it being kind of complicated when you've never used it really, and you never do it on a frequent basis. But the beauty of the skill challenge system is that it's pretty straightforward. It's not very complex, conceptually, and you could apply it to a wide variety of things, such as a chase scene. It could be anything that they're trying to accomplish in the game that is probably more than just one character making like a perception check or something, so it's very versatile. Yeah.
And everybody's involved, no matter what their skill set is. Everybody gets a turn, so everybody gets to contribute. And with the chase, the way that Wizards set up the chase system, you're actually hindering your own group. I mean, you roll a d20 at the end of your turn to see what the next person's problem is going to be.
Okay.
And I'm like, that's not fun. I ran it once. I did a 25-hour game. I ran a game for 25 straight hours about 6 or 7 years ago for charity. And one of the sessions, I was planning on having a chase in it. So I had the whole idea of I had everything set up, and it wasn't fun. I mean, the system just wasn't enjoyable.
Yeah.
So because in that system, you roll to see what happens, how you're hindering the person behind you, and then you're supposed to describe what you did based on what you rolled. With the skill challenge system, it's the opposite. You describe what you want to do, and then you roll to see how successful it is, which to me is a lot more D&D.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
yeah. The way you just described the 5th edition, it almost sounds like they're trying to like create some sort of like group narrative storytelling experience where the players are helping to tell the story too as it unfolds. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
I don't know, that conceptually sounds like, oh man, that's really cool, everybody's involved in the storytelling and stuff, but like in actual real life game tables, like most people, they're not the storyteller. They just want to, they are, because their characters are doing things which results in a story, but they're not going to be doing the narrative stuff. You know what I mean? That's usually why they don't become dungeon masters or something. I don't know. So
yeah, and there's a trend these days, and you see it a lot in streaming shows, of involving the players in the dungeon mastering.
Yeah. Where
somebody will say, okay, you walk into a tavern, describe the bartender for me, or who do you see that you know? And I'm like, that's great if a player likes that kind of thing,
right.
But players have different tastes too.
Yeah.
And you don't always want to go to the same player who likes that kind of thing. If you do that, you want to do it with everybody. So my main reason for not doing that is I don't want to put my players on the spot, because I have players that I know would not enjoy that. So I don't, but some groups love it. So
yeah,
to each their own. You can't. There's no wrong way to play.
No, there isn't. That's not my taste either. I wouldn't want to do that. I have one player that I always have players like when they deliver a killing blow, describe how they do it. Yeah. And some players like that more than others. I have one player who never liked doing it. He hated doing it, and he would just be like, whatever, you describe it, Luke. I don't care, but I'd almost always ask him. But now the interesting thing is that now he's starting to do it a little bit more. You know what I mean?
Cool.
But he also started dungeon mastering too. So perhaps, that has something to do with it. But he But it took him like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years to warm up to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And some people never will, you know. I mean, there's just some things that people aren't comfortable with.
Yeah.
And I don't. If I know that a character is not somebody who wants to talk in an accent, I'm not going to try to make them talk in an accent.
yeah.
I have players that do and players that don't, and I have one guy with a deep voice who likes to play female characters like every other campaign. He doesn't change his voice for the female character. We just accept the fact that she has a different voice than he does, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Even though he's speaking in character, it's just his voice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
All right, we got a super chat here. I can't even say her name. I'm gonna call you Jay. Jay, thank you so much for the $4.99 super chat. I really appreciate that. What would you advise for running a campaign with children? Ed, you want to go on that?
Yeah, I would love to. I started my kids out when they were 6 and 7. We started playing D&D, and we weren't playing D&D. We were actually playing a game. I believe it was called RPG Kids, and I got it off of Drive-Thru RPG. And it was a game specifically for younger children. It was very simple. It was a D12 and a D6, I think, were the only dice that you used. The tokens, because it had tokens for grid maps, were actually like little square pieces of paper and the different monsters and stuff were colored in crayon. So they had that look to them, and the adventures were things like rescuing a unicorn or a Pegasus from mean goblins. It was very, very focused on that. And then as they got older, we moved into basic D&D and 5th edition. But the Hero Kids is another good one. I just saw it pop up in chat. But the main thing for kids is to remember to be careful about what themes you use. Keep it thematically appropriate for children.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to put them in a situation where you would not want to have been there when you were a kid. Keep adult themes out of it. Keep romance out of it, because I know a lot of players like romance in games.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely don't want to role play a romance with a 4-year-old. That's bizarre and weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, just keep it theme appropriate no matter what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And rules light games are better than something like 3.5 that is crunchy.
Yeah. So my experience playing with children, probably, I think my daughter and I started playing when she was about 10 or 12 or somewhere in there. I don't know. But then I was running my youngling campaign, and those kids were like, I think they were about 12 or so years old. And we played for 3 years until they were around 15 or so. And that campaign is pretty much just dissolved due to the scheduling spiral of death, as most campaigns are destroyed by that beast. But the things that I did, so they were like 12 years old, right? Or a little bit older. And so I ran standard 5th edition for them, normal type. So I didn't change anything on my adventures because they're older at that point, It's the same monsters, the same themes. Like my games are clean anyway. I don't have adult themes in my games anyway. So it's just a standard D&D game. The only things I did differently is I gave them more magic items, in part because it's the cool factor, and also it helped them compensate for all of their stupid decisions. They're a little more powerful, so they can survive dumb decisions more. And obviously, as a veteran DM, I know how to adjust things if the magic items make too much of a difference in their power level. I wasn't concerned about that. So it was mostly for cool factor. And then I would coach them a little bit on certain things, when, for instance, I had one of the girls, for instance, was playing a fighter, very high armor class, lots of hit points, did a lot of damage, and she never wanted to go first. She wanted to stay to the back. And then the other girl was a ranger, and she was an archer, and she was fearless. She'd open all the doors and go first, but she's super squishy. And I was like, listen, let's talk about this, okay? You're a fighter, you have a heavy armor class, your group is counting on you to go up there and take some hits because they don't want to die. I know that you as a player have some trepidation, but your character, like that's their role type of thing. So I had to kind of talk to them about that. Now you don't have to play your fighter that way, but I was trying to just teach her the core mechanics of the game, where it's like you're putting your party in jeopardy because you won't go first. And then the ranger, I was like, I know you don't mind going first and stuff, but your character is getting the crap kicked out of them constantly. So, but it was mostly just some coaching, just hey, just trying to help get them into the game and understand some of the mechanics and stuff like that. So
yeah,
but,
and one of the big things for me, especially when they're young and you want them to grow up to be productive gamers, teach them that failure is okay, and that it can be fun. That failure can be some of the most fun in the game.
Yeah.
When they fail at something, don't make it just a failure. Spin it in a way that makes it entertaining, and don't just do it for one kid. Do it for all of them, so that they're laughing together and not laughing at each other. And find ways to fail forward with them, so that they realize that even if they fail, they're not losing the game. It's just a different way of having fun.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that you're allowing them to fail too is huge. We're not talking about the participation trophy mentality where you're going to get rewarded, you're going to get success. You can fail. I had my youngling group TPK'd once, completely TPK'd, and we discussed it, and they're like, yeah, we made some really bad decisions. We deserved that. And then they made new characters up, and they were all excited for the new characters, and the game kept going on. So the fact that failure is an option, and they learn to live with it, and they can behave like mature people and not throw temper tantrums, because there are adults that throw temper tantrums when their characters die, and it's really sad. But also the fact that on the opposite side of that kind of is the fact that they have to earn their victories and earn their successes. Things aren't just handed to you in the game. You got to make smart decisions. You got to do things, use your brains, and then the dice have a little bit, you got to have luck on your side as well. And so they're learning too that you have to work hard and use your brain if you want to have a victory and accomplish things, and that things aren't just handed to you, because real life isn't like that. Even though sometimes it seems like our education system and stuff, or parenting, or I don't know, something would have kids believe that it's just you, as long as you show up and you get your reward, and it doesn't work like that in real life.
Yeah.
So
The first 7 minutes of Raiders of the Lost Ark would not have been as much fun if Indiana Jones had measured out the sand correctly.
Oh yeah.
And if he had gotten just the right amount of sand on there and just walked out of the tomb with the gold idol, that would not have been nearly as much fun as watching him run through traps and fall in pits and outrun rocks. I mean, that's what makes entertainment. So you gotta have failures as well as successes.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, we have some questions here from members who, by the way, get priority in their questions, so we should probably answer their questions.
Okay.
Let's see. Here we go. Mr. Owl. Hey, what's up, dude? How you doing, buddy? Mr. Owl says, how much of a tip would you need to sing, rap, or chant the patron shout out next week? Well, this is my standard answer, $100. And then I will sing it or rap it. There you go. Thank you, Mr. Owl.
I won't be here, so like a quarter. Give me a quarter, and Luke will sing next week.
That doesn't work that way. Actually, yeah. If you super chat 100, you totally got it sung or rapped or something for sure. I'll make that happen.
Okay. Hey, there's another what's your favorite, and it's the same what's your favorite, and I'm going to answer it differently.
Okay, cool. Do it.
Okay. Lorenz said, what is Ed's favorite homebrew monster? I'm not going to answer the Grekti this time. My favorite monster that I ever made was one that had my players going, oh my god, I can't believe you did that. That's horrible. That's wrong. Why would you ever do that? And I call it a Celestial Lich, and it was a Solar that had fallen from grace and had used the divine power within him to transform himself into a member of the undead so that he could continue living forever. And he basically went through the process of becoming a lich, devouring souls, that kind of thing. And it was a skeleton with a raven skull and black feathered wings. Celestial Lich, it was like CR 20 something, and he was wonderful because my players thought that it was the most horrible thing I'd ever thought up,
That's awesome.
and I enjoyed that. The only one that I liked more was in second edition. I had players at like 19th level who told me that they wanted to start a new campaign after the next adventure because I couldn't challenge them anymore because they were so high level. So I invented a vampire beholder. I had a beholder that had hunted down a vampire and become a vampire himself. And the vampire beholder was, it taught them not to tell me that they can't be challenged.
Dude, I was today, so on Instagram, there's this one guy I follow that just, he posts covers to like RPG like modules and stuff like that, or games, and then he'll have like some paragraphs that actually talk about it a little bit. And one of the posts he left today, he was talking, I think it's called Vintage RPG or something like that, but the post he was talking about today was, he was describing how he never liked how beholders had such low armor class, and so one time he created a beholder. He created special suit, a mechanized suit for a beholder that's like imagine like an iron golem, only a beholder fits inside of it, and there are little holes for its eye stalks to come out. You know, so you have like a mechanized suit for like a beholder that protects it. Eye stalks come out, they can still hit you, and it has a sword and stuff. You know what I mean? So it's kind of just like, oh my gosh, that would just be horrible. You have the Iron Golem beholder cross. It's just amazing, and so I'll have to do that someday.
I was running Tomb of Annihilation for some players. And I had this really bizarre idea, and I decided to do it because there's a lot of grung in that adventure, and I love grung. Little colorful frogs. And so one of the encounters that they've had was I had a beholder zombie that one of the grung had, its middle eye was missing, and one of the grung had hollowed it out and climbed inside through the middle eye and had figured out a way to like pull on its like ligaments to make it turn, and then had figured out how to pull on the eye stalks from the inside to make them fire.
Nice.
So it was a grung riding around inside of a zombie beholder that it controlled.
That's cool.
And I actually made a token for it on Roll20, and it was just so much fun.
That's awesome.
All right, I think it's time for a cat strike. We need to do a cat strike. All right.
Sounds good.
Sweet. But before we do that, a message from our sponsor.
This live stream is brought to you by Arcweave. One of your biggest challenges as a dungeon master is unfolding your campaign's long and complex narrative. It sounds hard, but Arcweave can help. With Arcweave, you can use diagrams to design complex and branching stories. Visualize your narrative's flow in as much detail as you need. Fill it with encounters, adventures, and weave all your subplots. Create visual references to components like NPCs or magic items, and easily access them from anywhere in your project. Keep your flow simple by breaking your diagrams down to separate boards, and use folders to keep them organized. Collaborate in real time with colleagues working on the same project, and even test and rehearse your story's flow in the play mode. Your job is not easy, but Arcweave can help. See the link below for more information.
All right, cool. So this is the giveaway. Oops, that's the wrong way. Not the giveaway. This is the cat strike. All right, there's a link to the giveaway down in the description.
Ooh, I don't know how my cats eat this stuff.
My cats eat the same thing.
Hey,
My
look.
cat.
Check this out, Ed. Little guy.
Come here, buddy.
My boy. My boy.
Here he is.
Hi, buddy.
Oh yeah. He's like, don't pick me up.
All right, here we go. Here we go. All right, and then we're gonna take a quick bio break, and oh, I gotta put the cat cam on. What am I doing? There we go. Watch the kitties, and we'll be back shortly.
Only got like, I didn't get that many cats tonight, just a couple of them.
We have so many super chat and member questions.
I know, we have to start cracking on those. we talk a lot. It take a long time to answer the questions that we get behind.
It's what happens when you and I get together, Luke.
Yeah, we just talk too much. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, by the way, folks, the giveaway tonight is for a 1-year pro subscription to Arcweave. That's the little spotlight we just put on. They're the sponsor for tonight's stream. So if you click the link down below in the chat, you can get on in the giveaway. We will draw the winner to our giveaway today. It's a really cool program to help you plan out your D&D campaigns. And one of our team members, Zack, he was just evaluating it for us to see if it was like, you know, worthy of if it was a good enough thing for me to plug it for you all. And he's like, yeah, it's pretty cool. In fact, I'm gonna start using it in my own games. And I was like, okay, cool. I actually was using it to plan out Lair magazine and stuff like that. So pretty cool stuff. And we're giving away a 1-year subscription to it tonight. So check that out in the giveaway down below, or the chat link to the giveaway. Also want to give a thank you to a few new members that just joined. Owen Davies just became a member. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I swear Owen was a member before or something. Or maybe he just super chatted a lot. I don't know. But appreciate that. Anada, I hope I said your name right. Thank you so much for becoming a member. Really appreciate that. And then we have Adobe Gaming Through. All right. Well, thank you for becoming a member. Appreciate that. As a reminder, members' questions do get priorities in our live streams, as do super chats. Really appreciate all the support, guys. And then we're going to transition back to our interview screen right here. As a reminder, if you're just joining us tonight, I'm joined by our illustrious lead developer of all DM Lair publications, Ed Robinson. He's a longtime gamer, lots of wisdom and experience, probably more than I have. So
lots of experience, lots of wisdom is really scary there. But.
Well, we're just gonna pretend that we have wisdom. Yeah. All right, we have a question from Owen Davies. Thank you for your 265 super chat. I appreciate that. What is your advice for balancing versus power ramp?
Balancing versus power creep, I assume, is what he's talking about.
That makes sense.
How do I balance for power creep? I make the monsters tougher. I add more of them. I make things a little more challenging. I don't believe that. I love game balance. I don't like power creep. And there's some stuff that I just won't put in my game because I think that it's too much, or that it doesn't fit the genre. A lot of it doesn't fit my game world or my genre either. But as far as power creep goes, a DM has to, first of all, notice it. Because sometimes if you don't know this, if you don't know your player's subclass as well as they do, you're going to find out real quick where the power creep is, and then balance out the adventures and the encounters and stuff to be a little more challenging for those particular things. The one thing you do not ever want to do is neutralize it completely.
Yes.
If you have a character that's really good at something, and they probably picked that subclass to be good at that thing. So if you're constantly neutralizing their ability to do that thing, they're going to hate it.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
100%. Yeah, I agree with all that. In fact, one of the things I commonly see, the common responses is somebody will be like, "Hey, there's this player that can do X, Y, and Z. You know, what do I do about it?" And like the natural tendency for people to say will be like, "Well, use more monsters that do this." You know what I mean? And then, you know, have more encounters that feature this. That way, that ability of theirs isn't as useful and they can't use it, or it doesn't affect things. And that's doing exactly what you're saying. It's neutralizing it. And not only is it
so that's part of the problem with that approach. But the other part, in my opinion, is that it doesn't deal with the root problem, which is the actual ability. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to neutralize it, don't go roundabout in designing every single adventure or encounter to neutralize it. Just take it away from them. It's just easier if you have a real problem with it. Otherwise, do what you said. You know, increase the monster difficulties, the number of monsters, increase their damage output, something. You know what I mean? To just make it more challenging.
Or better than take it away from them, in my opinion, is work with them to make it work.
Yes.
If there's one aspect of it that's too powerful, if there's something that you find overbalancing, you're the DM, work with them to find a way to make that ability work so that it is balanced and they can still have fun with it and feel awesome, because your players should feel awesome.
Yes. I had a player in my Ancient Dragon campaign who was running the revised Ranger from Unearthed Arcana, and there were it's almost like the Ranger of the core book was so crappy that they like overcompensated in Unearthed Arcana, and there were some features of it that were just too much. And I did exactly that. I worked with the player. I said, hey, this right here that you could do is a little overpowered. Do you have any suggestions for how we might bring it back? I let them propose it to me, you know, and then I reviewed it and I was like, hey, okay, let's try that, you know? And so that way they were helping get the solution to the problem, and they were having buy-in on it and control over it, as opposed to me, the dungeon master, just saying, say goodbye to your pretty little friend and I'm taking your stuff away, you know, so.
Yeah, I actually use the revised Ranger in my games instead of the regular Ranger. I customized it and I balanced it first. I went through and I rebalanced it. And I like making subclasses and stuff. I love doing that. I love making stuff that's customized for my game world. So I have a PDF of like 35 different subclasses in addition to the ones in the books that people can use.
Nice.
And one of the things that I've got in there is the revised Ranger and how it works. And I've told my players, if you want to play the Ranger out of the player's handbook, you're welcome to. But this is how this one works, and this is why it's better. So, and more balanced with the other classes, because I thought that it was a good try, but it was definitely too powerful in places.
There was the one where you could basically unlimited times focus on a favorite enemy, and you would know the number and distance and direction, exactly where they were, all of your favorite enemies within like 1 mile of you or something, I think. Unlimited times, and my player chose humanoids. And so like, and we're in Waterdeep, and he's like, yeah, I focus on that. I can't tell you there are like hundreds of thousands of people. I can't do that. It's like, it's unplayable at the game table for me to tell you that every single time. And so we had to figure something else out that would actually work. It works if you pick like, you know, aberrations, or if you pick something that you're not going to find tons of. But when you pick humanoids, it's like, dude.
I use the rule from the player's handbook for that. If you pick humanoid, you get 2 kinds of humanoid. If you're a ranger and you decide that your favorite enemy is humanoid, you get 2. It can be gnolls and orcs. It can be orcs and bugbears, or goblins and kobolds. But that's it.
We might have been overlooking that and not actually using that part of the rule, because it was way unbalanced when we first started doing it. So, all right,
hi, Pickle.
Pickle,
I just saw Pickle say hi, so.
Hello, Pickle. All right, let's hit a member question. Anata says, how do you handle PC NPC romance? Do you treat PC romance like PvP, as in it's part of session 0 and must be established beforehand? I'll just take a quick stab at this. I don't have a lot of romance in my games. It's just usually not a thing that we do. We don't focus on it. Most of my players have never really cared about it, so we just don't really incorporate it at all. So I don't really have to deal with it. It's okay, Ed, go.
I have a lot of romance in my games. My players, a lot of my players really like it. They like to develop that for their characters. Some of them will write things into their background. I have a character right now who the man she loves was arrested by the evil king and put in prison, and the reason she's in the rebellion is to try to free him. I have a lot of incidental romance. I have very little player romance. Most of it is player NPC romance. Mainly because I think my players just don't want to. It's happened here and there a little bit, but not a lot. But with the thing with romance in any situation is that you want the player to initiate it. You want the players to know that you're willing to have that in the game, but you don't want to try to force it on the players, because some players may not want to do it. Some players may be eager to do that kind of thing as part of their character's role play, whether it's social or any number of things. Because romance doesn't just have to be social; it can be. You can have combat in romance too. I had a fighter that married a barbarian, and the first time that they met, it was combat.
Nice.
That's how they fell in love, by beating the crap out of each other. But the most important thing is to make sure that it's something the player wants to do, and for the most part, have them initiate it. It's possible that a player may want to do it but doesn't want to initiate it, and they will tell you, hey, I'm interested in doing the romance thing, but I'm a little nervous about it. So you want to bring it in easy and slowly for their comfort levels. You don't want to be embarrassing. You always want to fade to black. Never ever.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind. I don't get in for all that kind of role play.
Right.
We are a fade to black people, and that's just the way it is. But I have a lot of romance in my games. My games are very high fantasy, so there's a lot of high romance in there. And it just you just got to handle it like an adult, and try to avoid younger players trying to do it, because they're terrible at it, and it's creepy anyway to have a fake romance with a 14-year-old when you're 52.
Now that I think about it, I actually have had some romance in my game, my Sword Coast Guard game. I remember one of the players, Aaron's the player's name, and he was playing, I don't know if it was Sebastian or if it was Nigel. It might have been, it was Nigel. It was totally Nigel. And he seduced a succubus, and all types of conflict and problems happen in the world because of that, his little romance with the succubus. He didn't know it was a succubus, and later when he kind of found out, I think he was okay with it. And then there was another instance where Trevor had a character. I don't know if it was Meridon. No, it wasn't Meridon. That's the current game. I forget the name of it, but he had a character. There was the War Wizard of Waterdeep, like the lead wizard of like the War Wizards of Waterdeep. He was like kind of dating or something the lead war wizard type lady. And so there was a little bit of stuff going on there, but it was more kind of like, I think it was more just kind of like almost trying shenanigans. I know with Nigel's case, it was shenanigans. He was just having fun, And then when Trevor was doing it, it was a little bit more like a serious role play type thing, But anyway, so actually there have been a couple of things, but yeah, you just approach it like adults and you just deal with it. We never had any rules around it or anything. There might be a check, like when Nigel's trying to seduce the succubus, I might make him make a check or something, to see how successful he is, but nothing super complicated.
And never ever take a character's NPC significant other on adventures with them, because plot armor is horrible. And if the person that a character is romantically involved with goes out on an adventure with them and dies, they're either going to be upset about it as a player because they enjoyed that part of the role play, or usually they're going to be upset about it. Very few people who want to have that romantic role play want that person to die horribly because they took them into combat. So you don't want to give them plot armor, and you want to make sure that a player is okay with you murdering their significant other if you're going to do it as a plot device. Because sometimes people die for reasons like the main villain hunts down your family and friends and murders them. Make sure that your players know that kind of thing can happen.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, awesome. All right, let's hit some more here. Let's see if we had any super chats. Oh, we did have one. All right, oops. Oh crap, I clicked stuff wrong. All right, we have a super chat from Samuel Otten. Thank you, sir, for the $10 super chat. Really appreciate that. They say, I have 6 players. 5 of them are new, mid-teens. 1 of them is overly into social interaction and role-playing aggressively. I worry it's off-putting to the others and may scare them. So the question, I presume, would be, what potentially should he do in this situation?
Talk to them. Teenagers are almost adults. They are little adults in the making. And if you have a conversation with that player and you handle it correctly, keeping in mind that they're young and that they are not as emotionally developed as adults are, you not only can handle it in an adult manner, but you can also teach them that, adult conversations can be had about things that they may or may not want to talk about because they feel upset because they're being targeted or something.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes them more productive adults.
Right.
So that's really the best thing in any of those situations is talk to them. And I mean, if you're playing with little kids and they like the social interaction, let them talk all the time. But for like teenagers, they're almost adults. Just treat them with respect and remember that they're teenagers and not as emotionally developed as adults are. And you're not only helping the game, you're training them to be a more functional human being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think the conversation revolves around talking to them about what they're doing and how it's making other people feel and how it's affecting the game, and then, have that conversation. A lot of times people don't realize the effect they're having on others. They don't realize that they might be affecting people's feelings, or they don't realize that it's having a negative consequence on the game, a negative effect on the game. And when you let them know, and sometimes people are like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that, I'm sorry, I'll definitely try to whatever. But then there should always be a clear request at the end of it, a very clear okay, so this is what you're doing, this is how it's making people feel, this is the effect that it's having. If you could do X, Y, and Z, that will improve the situation, and so just having that conversation and being very clear. You want to be very clear about those things so that they understand, and that the desired action is clear as well. So, but yeah, totally. Conversation is always the way to go for that sort of thing, or any sort of conflict or problem most of the time. All right.
I got a question that I'm going to answer real fast because I can answer it real fast. It's for Ed from the kernel. What software does Ed use to make tokens? Adobe Photoshop. There you go.
Beautiful. Photoshop. I love Photoshop. All right. Here's one from Owen. Is it time for Ed to do a merch plug? All right, Ed, we need you to do the sleaziest DM Lair merch plug that you can possibly do.
Hey, you there. You want to buy a t-shirt? Could I interest you in a mug? It's 2-color. Black handle on a white mug. Doesn't get more creative than that. Maybe I could sell you a dice bag. We got dice bags that came out with a Kickstarter. I don't know if they're even available, but what the heck? I'll try to sell you one of those. I got one. I'll give it to you for $50. I really like it, but I have another one coming.
Those are limited edition, rare. Yeah, $500.
$500. $500 at least. But if you want a t-shirt or the most comfortable hoodie you will ever wear, I promise you have my personal guarantee on that. Money back from me if you're not satisfied. If you can find me, good luck with that. You definitely want to shop at the DM Lair store. And not only can you get merch that you can wear, but you can also get Dungeon Master resources. Lair magazine, I've heard it's pretty good.
Oh yeah.
I should know. I've stalked a lot of Patreons to find out if our magazine is better than theirs, and I know it is. Adventures. Luke wrote some adventures, and they're for sale. I've read a couple of them. They're pretty good. For an amateur. I mean, you got to give the man some credit. He was just starting out when he wrote some of them.
That's true.
And there's a lot of drow, which I admit are overused. But hey, Luke likes them, so
I like them.
Throw him some change here and there, Buy merch. There you go. That's the sleaziest I get.
Have mercy on this amateur D&D writer. Yeah. No, seriously, the first few things that I published on DriveThruRPG were so bad. Just the look and feel of the PDF was just cringy. It's but that's how you do it. You start out doing it. the best you can, you know, and it's not going to be very good, and then you iterate on that and you get better and better. And now the stuff we publish looks amazing, but we also pay people lots of money to make it look amazing as well. So that's the trade-off.
I have pulled down several things that I put on the DM's Guild when it first came out because they are that bad, and I don't want them associated with Luke's brand.
Oh yeah, I still have my original, like especially the first 3 to 5 adventures that I have on Drive-Thru RPG are still the exact same things, and they're still crappy and cringy and stuff, you know. But I almost leave them up there. To me, it's kind of like your earliest YouTube videos, you know, the ones that are just so crappy. But you know what? Darn it, I'm leaving them up there because that's history right there, you know, and it's still good information. But yeah, so.
Goliath said that my sleaze needs work.
Yeah,
I'm not a sleazy person. It doesn't come easy for me.
Yeah, it comes very easy for me. I can totally do the sleaze. That is not a problem at all. How do you feel about good drow, Ed?
How do I feel about good aligned drow?
Yeah, like Drizzt, you know.
Based on what I've read in 5th edition and what I see in D&D Beyond and other places, I'm pretty sure there's no such thing as an evil drow anymore. I think that like the matron of house, whatever Drizzt's house is like the only evil drow left in the Underdark. And she just walks out. Yeah, she just walks out into her cave every day and goes hello and listens to the echo and pretends it's people.
Yep. Yeah, they've all now been turned to they're at least neutral and have no alignment, but probably good. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. If I had a time machine, I'd do 2 things. I would go back in time and go to the BBC archives and steal all the episodes of Doctor Who that they destroyed so that I could bring them back and watch them because I want to see them. And the second thing I would do is stop off at R.A. Salvatore's house and smack him around a little bit. And suggest that maybe he stop at the end of the Icewind Dale trilogy, and leave it at that, just so that there wouldn't be so many frickin' good drow in the universe.
Does he keep on having more good drow show up?
Well, not necessarily good drow, but the reason there are so many good drow in D&D, and the reason that they're actually a PC race in the Player's Handbook, is because Drizzt Do'Urden is the superest, coolest edgelord that ever lived, and everybody wants to be him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Everybody loves that character. I remember when I was in high school, I grew up reading those books. They're literally what got me into D&D. And playing the game, and they changed my life course amazingly. So I grew up reading those bad boys and so many times, and I love Drizzt also. And I remember when I was writing like manuscripts and stuff for novels when I was in high school, and my very first manuscript I wrote, the main character was totally a Drizzt knockoff. But he didn't have 2 scimitars. He had 2 long swords. Okay, but you know what? He was really good at. He was like an invincible warrior too. Like he was so good with those swords. But I didn't stop there. That was too much. He also was a very powerful spellcaster. But now wait a second. I didn't stop there either, because he could also like jettison himself into the ethereal plane or the dream world or something, and he could do stuff there too. So he was like insanely powerful in every way possible, and totally based off Drizzt. That's my very first manuscript I wrote.
Yeah, I had when I was in college, some people wanted to play a drow-based game because everybody loved those books, and I was over it. But I played anyway, and they were all playing like chaotic good and neutral good drow, and I played a lawful evil drow. And in the very first adventure, I exchanged them to a devil in exchange for my freedom. We were losing the fight, so I said, hey, you know what? If you let me go, I'll walk away and stop casting spells at you. And the devil said, okay, so I walked out and let them all die. That's how much I hate good aligned drow.
That's awesome. And your brother players are probably like, what?
What's going on?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm evil, you guys. You're the morons who are. Yeah.
Yep.
That's awesome. Let's hit a super chat. We do have a super chat, and then we're gonna transition into our Thaco the Clown discussion, which I know
Awesome.
we're really excited about. Oh, before we get to the super chat though, I do want to hit our plug for the sponsor of this video, Arcweave. Very, very cool program that you can use to design your D&D campaign, design interweaving plot lines, adventures, NPCs, plot hooks. We are doing a giveaway too for Arcweave tonight. The winner for tonight's giveaway will get a 1-year pro subscription. There should be a link down below where you can sign up for that. Basically, Arcweave is a program that helps dungeon masters design their campaigns, adventures, and storylines. You can visualize the campaign's narrative flow. You can create all these cards, connect them together. You can create details such as plots, subplots, adventures, NPCs, and monsters. And as you can see, everything is visual, and everything can be a visual reference to help you find the information that you need. There's also separate boards and folders for you to keep things organized. You can collaborate real time with co-dungeon masters. Goliath Cleric, who's in the chat right now, is one of our team members, and I asked him to evaluate the product because we don't do sponsored messages for just anything. We have to make sure that it's a quality product that we actually think you guys will find value in. And so he was evaluating it for us, and he's like, Luke, this is so good that I'm going to start using it. And now apparently he's using it when he writes stuff for Lair magazine. So it's a very cool program, and you can check it out in the link down below and get in on the giveaway for a chance to win a 1-year pro subscription. All right, and then what did I say we were gonna do? Okay, then we're gonna do the super chat, and then we're gonna do our Thaco the Clown talk. We are trying to raise $500 for the Capital Area Humane Society. They help dogs and cats in the city where I live. So all tips, 100% of all tips go toward the Capital Area Humane Society. There's a link down in the chat too if you would like to donate to that cause. All right, now on to our super chat. Grimmy says, oh, thank you for the $20 super chat, Grimmy. Really appreciate that. Question is, hola, amigos. You should have finished your entire question in Spanish, dude. We could have totally fielded that. It's not a problem. Anyway.
Luke could have totally fielded that. It's not a problem.
I am planning a mini arc with a mafia-style big bad and organization. What are some tips for running Mafia in D&D, hooking players in and setting a sort of timeline of events?
Oh, is this me?
I mean, I have some thoughts, but my thoughts are basically, it sounds like a normal D&D game, you know?
This is my thoughts on running a Mafia campaign. I actually ran a Mafia themed one shot at LairCon, which is what this shirt was. For somebody asked me what my shirt was. It's the LairCon shirt.
Mine's cooler.
But this is how you run a Mafia campaign. Go online to Amazon or Netflix or whoever it is, wherever it is you get movies. You may probably more than one streaming service. Watch The Godfather. Watch The Godfather 2. Watch Goodfellas. Mm-hmm. Watch Hoodlums. Watch My Cousin Vinny. Just saturate yourself with mob movies and movies with mob-like characters, and take notes. Steal tropes. People say not to use tropes because tropes are cliche. There's a big difference. Tropes are good. Cliches are bad. There's a reason that tropes exist because they define the genre. Mm-hmm. So watch a lot of mob movies. Take a lot of notes. Use those tropes in your game, and it will feel like you are running a Mafia game.
Yeah, beautiful. I like that answer. In essence, once you get that stuff in your brain, you're running a D&D game. You're designing a D&D game, standard rules and everything. There's really not a big difference. You're probably going to have a mafia head boss. There are going to be henchmen. You know, you want to have missions and things that are going on that help to make your world feel like that mafia type world, mm-hmm. you know, but you're still running a D&D game. So if there's a mafia, there's a head boss, there's the Godfather, which means, and then he's got lieutenants. And so at the lower levels, your players are probably going to be pitted up against some of those lower ranking thugs, you know, the street level enforcers, and then they're going to work their way up. You know, they might have to take out one of the lieutenants, one of the underlings, the underbosses, or whatever you call them, you know, and that's the campaign. They're slowly getting deeper and deeper into the organization and taking out more and more people. The guy at the top is getting more and more pissed off, and he's sending more and more of his enforcers to get the characters and stop them, you know, and things are just boiling and boiling, and they keep on going at it until finally, toward the end of the campaign, whenever you decide that's going to be level 12, 15, 20, whatever, they end up having to take out the final boss, you know, and he's pretty upset at this point because the players have been destroying his livelihood, you know, and so you're running your standard D&D game and you're setting it up, you know, along those guidelines, and then you're obviously the individual details are going to be informed by all of that information you have in your head, as Ed said, from, you know, immersing yourself in all those movies and all those tropes and stuff like that, you know. But it's really a standard D&D game. It just has a flavor to it, you know. That's flavored by the Mafia.
But really, that's my advice for any subgenre. If you want to do it, if you want to do a heist, if you want to do a horror, if you want to do anything like that, aside from watching some really good videos, I'm going to plug one other YouTuber on Luke's channel, and that's Seth Skorkowski. If you want to run a mob game, if you want to run a heist game or a horror game or some games like that, go to his channel. He has some really good videos on how to run those types of games, and he is a writer, so he's also he writes those kinds of stories. But just submerge yourself in the genre, and hopefully it's one you enjoy, because you should do a lot of research. If you want to make it realistic. Otherwise, just wing it.
That's funny. I just wing half the stuff that I do, you know. But it's fun, but it's not very historically accurate, I'm sure. All right, here's a good one. Rob Frog says, when purchasing Lair magazine in the shop in the DM Lair store, does it come with all the tier features and digital content? Yes, you get the entire Lair magazine, all the different tiers. It's usually over 50 pages of content. You get all of the digital maps. You get the Dungeon Master maps. You get the player maps. You get gridded and non-gridded maps. You get all of the maps you need, and you can plug them into Roll20, Fantasy Grounds, the virtual tabletop of your choice. You get all of the content. You don't have to like buy Lair magazine and then go somewhere else to get the maps, the digital maps separately. You get everything you need to run the game. So yeah, it's all included. And there's probably, my moderators could probably throw a link to the DM Lair store down in the chat too. All right.
I think it's Thaco time.
Yes, that's right. We were going to do Thaco. Okay, beautiful. Moderators, could we get a little thing in the spreadsheet that just timestamps our Thaco talk? Because Ed and I, we have talked about Thaco a tiny bit, I think, in Discord and our PMs and stuff like that. And now we're going to deep dive into this Thaco the Clown topic. It's something that Ed told me about a while ago when The Wild Beyond the Witchlight came out, and I took a look at it and I was like, really? They published this? And I've seen some videos as well from people that dove into it and were discussing it, and I'm just like, wow. So we're gonna talk about Thaco the Clown. Now, before we get into like the discussion, the controversy, talking about some of the things that people are hypothesizing that Thaco the Clown means, or whatever statement they think that Wizards might be trying to say with Thaco the Clown, we're gonna literally pull up D&D Beyond and look at Thaco the Clown to set the context right before we start talking about these things. So I'm gonna pull that up on the screen here, and right here. So it is from the book Wild Beyond the Witchlight, and I actually have page references. This is obviously a screenshot from D&D Beyond, but the page that we're looking at in the actual book is page 48, and here it starts to talk about Thaco the Clown. And what it tells you is, it kind of starts right here, and it says that they're at a circus. They're basically at a big carnival type circus thing. I think it's like a fey carnival or something that does bad stuff. And it says, the central area enclosed by the wagons is guarded by Thaco the Clown, a human witchlight hand, chaotic neutral, see the stat block earlier in the chapter, who is loyal only to Master Witch. He usually sits right outside the door to Witch and Light's wagon, blowing bubbles with his bubble pipe.
All right. Now I'm going to go over to a role-playing card that is toward the back of the book. This role-playing card is on page
249.
248 in my book, but
248. 248. My tab is on 249.
Okay, that's fair. And the role-playing tab here says, Thaco is the longest-serving Witchlight hand, but no one really knows his history, and scarcely any dare to ask, for he almost never speaks and harbors a malicious streak that is kept in check by Mr. Witch. He paints his face with a grin and puffs on a bubble pipe. Thaco has retired from performing and no longer stages his knife-throwing act due to an unfortunate incident that took place in the Big Top some time ago. Alignment, chaotic neutral. Personality trait, I prefer not to talk. When I must, I say as little as possible. Ideal, everyone should mind their own business. Bond, my bubble pipe, if anyone touches it, they lose a finger. Flaw, I can't stand children. They're all like roaches. Now, Ed, do you know if there's any other references to Thaco the Clown, or is that pretty much all that takes place in that book?
Thaco is mentioned 10 times in the book, and you covered almost all of it. There are only his name is only used 10 times. There is a little bit more to it, though, if you get into the details, and I'll point out those references as well. Thaco is not alone. There is another guard that works with him who is named Burley. He is a neutral good, I believe, bugbear that wears a pumpkin on his head. And they do not get along. They don't like each other. Burley does not trust Thaco, and his personality traits are on page, or maybe it's Hurley. Make sure I get the right one.
It's Burley. It's Burley.
Okay, his are on page 243, and basically it says that he's neutral good. He treats his brain like a muscle, trying to keep it strong. So he's clearly meant to at least think he's smarter than Thaco. He tries to keep the peace. He doesn't advocate violence. He's just doing his job, which again is counter Thaco being a knife thrower and being grumpy. His bond is his brother, and sometimes he forgets his own strength and accidentally breaks things, like especially fragile things. I think the word fragile is very important there as well. To a lot of people's arguments in this situation.
Now, so this is interesting.
Yeah.
It literally, in the back, it says Hurley, the bugbear with an H. In the illustration,
there's two.
Oh, there's two of them.
Hurley and Burley are brothers.
Oh, okay. That's why I'm getting confused then.
Yeah.
So it looks like Burley with a B is the one that dislikes Thaco.
Yeah. Yep. That's the personality traits I was just reading.
Okay, cool. I was getting him confused. Sweet. All right, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Continue. Or was that it? You're just putting the context for that.
I was putting context in for something that I have in my discussion.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
As we discuss this.
So that is like the basic, the foundation of what has been published, basically about Thaco the Clown and this bugbear, Burley or Hurley, or whichever one it happens to be. And so I think so what's basically being put out there, the theory out there is that Thaco the Clown is a sort of allegorical stand-in for grognards or old school players who are, you know, maybe from the first edition, second edition or something. Second edition was when we had Thaco, right? And that they are gatekeepers and that they are undesirable or something. And so I think that the theory is that's being purported is that this was published as a dig against old school gamers, grognards, you know, and that it's meant to be taken in a derogatory way and saying, hey, we kind of don't want you here, you know, go away, you're grumpy, you're a gatekeeper, goodbye type of thing. So it's meant as a dig. That's what the theory goes. So what are your thoughts on that, Ed?
Well, the picture, I don't know if you showed the picture. The instructions that the artist was given was that he has a painted on smile, but he is frowning. In addition to a basic description of the character and his bubble pipe and all that kind of stuff. Wizards of the Coast has... I don't know if Wizards of the Coast has an official statement on Thaco, but Sage Advice and the artist say that, you know, it's just an attempt to, you know, include something from the old school as like a remember this, a sort of happy memory of the past kind of thing. Where people have a problem with it, especially older people who play the older editions, is that there are a number of things that make this character look like there was intent behind it. When you think of an old school D&D player from the 70s and 80s, in generally, their picture, look at comic book. Let's talk about comic book guy on The Simpsons. He's overweight. He's rude. He's grumpy. When you give a character a pipe, you are automatically making that character older, because young people don't smoke pipes. Pipes are associated with the older characters. They made him the gatekeeper that keeps young people away from the staff. Because the bugbear Burley loves kids and loves helping young people get to meet Mr. Witch and Mr. Light. But Thaco is a gatekeeper who doesn't want young people to have fun. And a lot of these things are associated with older players, especially on social media. They're called out a lot as being gatekeepers. They don't want girls in their game. They don't want LGBTQ plus people in their game. All this kind of thing. And in my experience, much like you have a vocal minority who are saying all of these things are terrible in Wizards of the Coast and guiding their product development, you also have a vocal minority of old grumpy gamers who are incredibly conservative, only like things their way, but they're a minority. Whether it's far to one side or another, they're a minority that are loud, and so they get this image. One of the other things that makes it look like it's an old versus new is that Wizards of the Coast right now is making a lot of effort to remove certain tropes from the game. Humanoid monsters aren't evil. They're just like everybody else, and they can be whatever they want to be. So Thaco's nemesis is a good aligned bugbear who loves children. So he represents the new D&D, and Thaco represents the old D&D. So you have these two things butting heads. And so it's really hard to look at all of the evidence and say that there was nobody was giggling behind the scenes at how this was going to, how they were making fun of old D&D players. Now, did they mean it to be offensive? Did they mean it to be an homage? Who knows? But the truth of the matter is that the material itself can be taken in an offensive manner because of all of the evidence that this was meant to be a dig on older gamers. Whether it was or not doesn't matter. I mean, let's look at the other extreme. You know, a lot of people on Twitter decided that orcs were a representation of African Americans or black people, whichever term you want to use, and that orcs being evil meant that, you know, it was racist to have orcs be evil as a race. And that all started because somebody accused J.R.R. Tolkien of being racist and said that orcs were black people. When in fact, you know, orcs were fascist Germans, because that was the war that he had just come out of when he wrote The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. So if it's true that you can be offended by orcs being evil because somebody said that orcs were representative of black people, then it's true that you can be offended by a representation that looks like Wizards of the Coast is making fun of you, whether or not that was the intent. So that's, I mean, really, in my opinion, it's always a choice to be offended. You choose to be offended or you choose to let it roll off your back. So even if it was in a deliberate dig, if you're being super offended by it, you choose to be super offended by it. I mean, even when I brought it to you, I wasn't offended by it. I just thought that it was, you know, I thought that it was deliberate. And I'm still not sure that it wasn't. But it's just the fact that there's so much evidence supporting the fact that somebody at Wizards was giggling about it when they were writing it, to make it not intentional, at least on some level.
Right.
Now, am I offended by it? No. Do I think people should be offended by it? No. I think people should just ignore it, because otherwise it's just going to cause arguments on social media, because really, what else are you going to do about it? But that's really my opinion on the whole thing, is that, it's like anything else. You can choose to be upset by it, or you can accept the fact that it may or may not have been meant to be offensive and just choose to ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
what's interesting too is that the intent is not necessarily what we're talking about. It's people's perceptions of it, right? Will someone be offended by this? And right now it seems like WotC is sanitizing a lot of their content to reduce the chances that anybody anywhere will be offended by it. And there's a definite, like, we're getting an entire new monster manual, that's being sanitized. It's just, we're reprinting monsters with no changes really, and we're just sanitizing them so that you won't be offended by the alignment system, essentially. And so they're making, and that product is not going to do very well. It's going to sell very, very poorly. It's going to get a very bad reception, and they know that, but they're willing to spend the money on it for the optics of it, for the perception of it, or because they don't want to offend people, right? And so the question then is, if they're willing to spend so much to do that for the things that they're sanitizing in that product, well, then the question is why wasn't that considered for this? Where was their sensitivity reader when this content was going through? And it begs the question, is their sensitivity readers, are they only checking for certain things? Are there only certain checkboxes they're checking for? And, are there some groups that we don't want to offend, and there are other groups that it's okay to offend? Because, if you look at like the Graniers, the old school gamers and stuff, they happen to be, probably predominantly white men. They just probably are. They probably are, And so are we saying then that it's okay to, marginalize or offend that segment of the population, but it's not others? I would say that that's probably prejudice and bias and probably not okay, And so the question is are there sensitivity readers also checking for those things? If they are, this is a really big thing that slipped through, really big. So,
and there are allusions to old school D&D in here that are in Wild Beyond the Witchlight that as an old player I love. If you go to the factions on page 219, from that point until the monsters, you get the League of Malevolence, and then you get Valor's Call. And all of those characters were based on action figures that you could buy in the 80s, D&D action figures in the 70s and 80s. Every one of those characters is one of those action figures, and some of them even appeared on the old D&D cartoon in the 1980s. Warduke appeared in the cartoon, and then let's see, Strongheart the Paladin appeared. I believe that Warduke appeared, and Kelek the evil wizard appeared. And in the D&D cartoon, Kelek was trying to steal unicorn horns, and in the adventure, he's trying to hire the players to go get him a unicorn horn. So they did a lot of that throwback stuff to the older editions that is fine. I mean, there's nothing offensive about it. There's one character that I believe the action figure was female, and they made the character transgender, or maybe it was male and they made it transgender. And, that's fine. They want to be inclusive. I got no problem with that. But there are old school dudes in that vocal minority that are complaining that this character was made transgender when it was supposed to be female. That is prejudice. There's a prejudice behind that. And I agree with you that, the sensitivity readers only appear to care about one side of the argument, or the one side of the social media argument. And there is a lot of cool older stuff in the adventure. I mean, I'm not a big fan of this adventure because I like my games to be a little more punchy, and this adventure is a lot more of just playing around, and social stuff. But I'll use some of the NPCs in here. I'll use Warduke at some point because I loved Warduke when I was a kid. I thought he was awesome, and now I have a Warduke miniature and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between like including that kind of stuff to build nostalgia, and then putting something like Thaco the Clown in, and not recognizing or pretending to not recognize that somebody might have found it offensive.
Yeah, and what I find really interesting too is the response, or perhaps lack of response about it as well. The Sage Advice. Who actually runs that? Is that a wizard run thing? Do you know?
Sage Advice is an international site. I think it's in England or something. The guy who runs it is independent. Zoltar Sage Advice is what he uses on Twitter. And what he does is he collects the tweets and that kind of stuff, and the official Sage Advice that's put on Twitter and other social media, and compiles it onto that website.
Okay.
So he's not, to the best of my knowledge, he's not officially associated with Wizards. And one of the reasons I say that is because he doesn't only use Wizards people on the site. He has answers from Sly Flourish. He has answers from Matt Mercer. And none of those people are official. They're just famous.
Yeah.
So it's not Wizards run, to the best of my knowledge.
Okay.
It's just him collecting everything he can and trying to make a resource to help people.
Okay, that's good. And that prefaces the next thing I was going to show, because there was this is the D&D Sage Advice. I'm showing on screen that thing that was linked in the chat and that I sent you in our PM. And this is a tweet from Will Doyle. Do you know, was that the artist you were referring to, or who was that?
Yeah. That was the artist that drew the character.
Okay, cool. And what I find really interesting about this, and my point here, well, let's read the tweet. Basically, Will Doyle says, "My goodness, there are a lot of zany misconceptions out there about the supposed meaning behind Thaco the Clown, one of my favorite Witchlight Carnival characters. Let me assure you, he's just a grumpy clown whose name is a nostalgic nod to an old D&D mechanic." And what I found interesting about this is that if that had, and I know that's not like an official Wizards of the Coast response, but if that sort of response had been Wizards' response to the complaints about drow or the complaints about orcs, just kind of pish-poshing it away and saying, "Oh my gosh, you guys are crazy. You're making up all these zany things. You know, you're kind of saying this, that, and the other. It's not what the intention was. You know, orcs are just bad guys. They were originally based on Nazis, so just calm down over here." You know, and I don't know what their complaint about drow was. Probably because they're dark-skinned and evil would be my guess. And so you're characterizing, you know, dark-skinned people as evil. That would be my guess. But you guys are crazy. That wasn't the intention. Just calm down, pish-posh it away, and then move on with your lives. If that had been the official response, you know, from Wizards about those two things, you know, social media people would have freaked out even more than they already did. You know what I mean? And so that tweet obviously is from the artist. So that's not the official Wizards voice. I recognize that, you know, but that sort of response to just pish-posh it away, you know, when people are obviously reading into it and people are obviously not liking it, is also, it doesn't align, that sort of mentality doesn't align with like the way Wizards is approaching every other thing, which is sanitizing it, making it as unoffensive as possible and inclusive as possible. You know what I mean? So I just kind of felt that sort of response isn't very satisfactory either, you know?
And I'm gonna swing around and look at it from a different perspective too. And I'm not going to talk about Thaco the Clown, but Thaco in general. And I'm not going to explain the mechanics because they're much easier than people want to believe. But there's sort of another kind of gatekeeping going on right now on social media, and that is everyone talking about Thaco like it was like you needed a master's degree in calculus to understand it. When in fact all it is the ability to subtract one number from another. And sometimes those are negative numbers.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
You lost me right there, dude.
Okay.
Subtracting numbers? Whoa.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if second grade math bewilders you. Here you go. I will explain the mechanic. This is how Thaco was supposed to work, and it's going to be. We got some old school players on there that are going to correct me, but I'm giving a very high level idea of Thaco. In first edition, there was a matrix. And you had to look at this matrix to figure out what you needed to hit. Thaco was a simplification of that. Thaco stands for 2-hit armor class 0. And what it was in D&D in the old days, you started at AC 10 and went down because that's how chainmail worked. It has nothing to do with whether it was the right way to go. I think that escalating armor class is actually smarter, but that's how it worked. You went from 10 to negative 10. If you had a 15 Thaco, if your character had a 15 Thaco, and you were attacking a creature with a 5 armor class, you would subtract 5 from 15 and you would need a 10 to hit them. If they had a -5 armor class, you would subtract -5 from 15, or 15 plus 5, and you need a 20 to hit them. It's second grade math. It's not hard. This is how Thaco really worked, though. This is how Thaco worked in practice. I, as the DM, would say, "What's your Thaco?" And you would say 17, and then you would roll a d20 and tell me what you got on the die, and I would tell you whether or not you hit. 90% of the time, at least in my experience, players weren't even calculating the Thaco. The DM was. So it's not that hard. It's just the ability to subtract one number from another, and sometimes that number is negative.
Yeah.
Was it the best system? No, but it was the system we had, and it worked because you just had to know second grade math, and the game was for kids 8 and up. So you were in at least third grade by the time you were doing it. So, so there you go. There's what I'm talking about, subtracting numbers. Thaco's not that hard, but players who, in my opinion, have probably never played with Thaco, and gamers who are really into the new generation of gaming, 5th edition, 3rd edition, they like to attack Thaco as a way of saying that the old games were too crunchy or the old games were too complicated. And there's another kind of gatekeeping going on here, because by telling new players that Thaco is complicated and that the old games are too complicated, they're trying to prevent players from playing the old games and getting into those old games. And I don't know whether it's because they make more money off 5e than they do if you buy a 2e PDF off of DM's Guild. I don't know. But it's another form of gatekeeping by making all these jokes about how tough Thaco is. Instead of opening the gate to let them in, you're closing the gate so they don't go out. And that's just another form of gatekeeping.
Yeah.
And gatekeeping is really, people only talk about gatekeeping for keeping things out. You don't want girls to play with you. My first D&D group had 2 girls in it. I've never had a D&D group in my entire life that did not have girls that played in it. So I'm not going to tell girls, and trust me, as a 14-year-old nerd in high school, I would have paid money to have more girls at the table, because that's the entire girlfriend pool for an entire gaming club. And if you've only got 3 girls in that gaming club, those you got 20 male nerds and 3 girl nerds. You only got 3 girls that you could possibly go out with in high school, because the athletes certainly aren't going out with you when you play D&D in the 80s. So, Matt Mercer wasn't on the internet back then. People didn't swoon over internet players, over D&D players. So yeah, I would have given my right arm to have more girls playing D&D. But yeah, it's just that because there is a minority out there that does bad things, anybody from that generation gets classified as doing those bad things. And so everybody who played D&D before 1990 is a gatekeeper, according to the internet. And it's just not true. But on both sides, you have very vocal minorities that get everybody else in trouble.
Yeah, I love how that works. The vocal minorities, and then they influence the decisions that people make. Like companies and stuff like that make these decisions. And I 100% guarantee you that if the whole steering people away from Thaco is something that Wizards is trying to do, it absolutely has to do with driving people toward their new products. Because the new products make them way more money than PDFs on DM's Guild. You can't compare that. So
yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Yeah, just physical books, and they get the books printed in China for $3 a pop, and they're selling them for 50 or 30 if it's an Amazon or whatever. They're making lots of money there. You know what I mean? And it's really hard to pirate books, physical books. Whereas PDFs is so easy to pirate it. So there's there's definitely a reason they would go toward that sort of stuff if they're actually perpetrating that, which I don't know that they are. Yeah, but. Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much the thing on Thaco, the clown, and why lots of people are upset about it, and I don't know if it was intentional or not. I really just kind of go back to the thing of, it doesn't matter if it's intentional, people are being offended by it. And if you are going to sanitize your products to remove things that are potentially offensive, even if that wasn't the intent, like orcs and drow, then you got to do it for everything. You know what I mean? Because if you don't do it for everything, then people are going to ask the question, well, why didn't you? Are you okay with offending these people then? That's the natural question. If you don't sanitize it for everything and every possible person in the world that could ever possibly ever be offended, you know, and the more you sanitize things, the more you try to not offend anybody, in my opinion, the more bland of a product you're going to get, you know, like you just can't, you know. I remember talking to one of my buddies about Magic the Gathering, and he was telling me that there was this developer for Magic the Gathering, and they would frequently say, we would rather put out a card that half of the people love and half of the people hate, rather than a card that 100% of the people feel so about, you know, because that card that people half love, half hate is going to be a way better card and get a lot more excitement than a card that everybody's just kind of like, you know, it's okay. It's not a big deal, you know? And so the more you sanitize things and the more you make everything palatable to everyone, the more you're going to get, you know, it's okay.
Yep.
And then then nobody's excited. Nobody wins.
That's why I had no interest in Strixhaven, honestly. it was just too bleh.
Yeah.
But also on that note, I'm a big fan of the Romani. I try not. I don't use the word gypsy. I've known some Romani in my life, and I've had friends among the Romani. They sanitized Curse of Strahd when they re-released it, and they took out anything that made the Vistani look bad as a people. They aren't thieves and assassins anymore. They're travelers. They changed the names of their wagons because the name they used was too close to actual Romani wagons. I promise you this, because I know the statistics of how many true Romani there are in the world. I guarantee you that there are less true Romani people playing Dungeons and Dragons than there are old school gamers. So if they're going to sanitize Curse of Strahd because they don't want to offend the Romani, why is Thaco the Clown allowed to exist? Because you're going to offend a lot more people with Thaco the Clown than you are with making the Vistani scoundrels.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And that's the problem. That's the question. If you sanitize one thing or two things, you got to sanitize it all. And if you don't, people like you and me are going to ask the question, why didn't you? What was your intent then if you didn't, you know? So anyway, that's the Thaco the Cloud thing. It's a beautiful, wonderful topic. A lot of people are getting foaming at the mouth over it and stuff. And possibly for a good reason. But there you go. There are our thoughts on that. Okay, we are going to do our cat strike now, where I give my cats catnip and they roll around and do stupid things and get crazy.
All right.
But first, we are going to do a quick message from our sponsor, Arcweave, who is giving away a 1-year subscription, 1-year pro subscription to their platform, to their product. And here you can learn more about it. This live stream is brought to you by Arcweave. One of your biggest challenges as a dungeon master is unfolding your campaign's long and complex narrative. It sounds hard, but Arcweave can help. With Arcweave, you can use diagrams to design complex and branching stories. Visualize your narrative's flow in as much detail as you need. Fill it with encounters, adventures, and weave all your subplots. Create visual references to components like NPCs or magic items and easily access them from anywhere in your project. Keep your flow simple by breaking your diagrams down to separate boards and use folders to keep them organized. Collaborate in real time with colleagues working on the same project and even test and rehearse your story's flow in the play mode. Your job is not easy, but Arcweave can help. See the link below for more information. Okay, and now we are going to, I have the happy carrot, and this is the only one I can find. I have no idea where the banana went, but I'm gonna get the happy carrot all hopped up with cat crack, which is also known as catnip. I literally, I was on Amazon looking for catnip, and I saw this one and I was like, I have to have this. This is just amazing. And it costs twice as much as any other catnip. And I'm sure it's because of the name. They're like, you know what? If we call it cat crack, we can charge twice as much. And they're right, they can. Because I bought it because of that. Anyway, let's get this this carrot going and give it to Squeaky. He's going crazy over here. All right.
And we're going to transition to the cat cam so that you guys can all get a nice close look at Squeaky as he freaks out. And then Ed and I are going to bio, and we will be back, and we will continue with our Q&A. I know I'm going to bio.
I'm going to get some cheese.
Cheese. Get some bacon.
Yeah, I don't have any bacon right now. I wish I did.
Yeah. You don't have any bacon?
I think we have some in the house, but it's not made.
Oh, well, okay. That's fair. I'm sure if we have some, it's not made either. We'd have to cook it.
So, Luke, I have a charity plug.
Okay.
I do, and not as much in the last couple of years, but I've done a lot of work for Extra Life, a gamer charity.
Okay.
For Children's Hospital, and they put out Wizards of the Coast normally puts out something on DM's Guild every year for Extra Life. This year, Wizards of the Coast didn't do it, but the Baldur's Gate people did, the video game people. Mm-hmm. And it is called Minsk and Boo's Journal of Villainy. And you can get it for like $15 in PDF. So I bought it in PDF, and then I bought it on print on demand for like $50. First, the only thing I've ever bought on print on demand. This book is amazing. It has factions. It has heroes. It has villains that are all like high-level villains, like CR 20-some and higher villains. And then for every one of those villains, it has henchmen. And a lot of the villains are tied to some of the factions and the patrons. And the henchmen are all tied to villains but don't need to be used in that way. And the henchmen the villains tend to be in like the high levels. The henchmen tend to be in the mid-level range, tier 3, tier 2 and 2 to 4. And then in the back, it's got a lot of monsters that are taken from like the old Fiend Folio. Okay. They're actually really well balanced.
Yeah.
Some of them are just monsters I loved from back in the day that aren't around anymore, like the Wolfware and the Hamadryad and the Therim, Skeleton Warriors. They're just a bunch of them in there.
Is it mostly
and
just
every
full
single
monster stat blocks then? Is that the majority of it?
Yep, and every single monster has full page art.
Oh wow.
Every monster, every character. Like you got this guy Daegrin the Lost is one of the henchmen. He gets a full page picture. One of the villains. Let me see if I can find my favorite of the bad guys in here. They have the God of the Slotty in here. There she is, Sendem, Lord of Madness. Gets a full page. All of the heroes get a full page. The art is beautiful.
That was a serious stat block you just showed too. It's a full page stat block for that Slotty.
That was a full page stat block. And I would like to. This is Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. This I use less than 10% of this book.
Yeah.
This is Minsk and Boo's Journal of Villainy. I would like to show you the thickness ratio. This thin book over here is Tasha's. This thicker book over here is Minsk and Booze.
Yeah.
So it's an amazingly well done book, and every single penny beyond production costs goes to a very good charity. And it's on DM's Guild. It's Minsk and Booze Journal of Villainy. If you run D&D and you ever want to get into high level play, I heard some people mention in the chat about wanting more stuff for high level play. This book is aimed at levels like 10 and higher, except for the monsters in the back, which can be used at a lot of different levels. It's an amazing book. It's one of the best produced books, one of the best produced things that I've ever seen on the DM's Guild, and I highly recommend it. I think people should buy it and do something good for kids with cancer.
Cool. Thanks a lot. Moderators, can I get one of you to link that book in the chat, please? People are asking for it, but they just need a link to it. I'd appreciate that. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think you guys were talking about that at one of our patron hangouts. We do these things where every month my patrons and I get together on a Zoom and we just hang out and talk and stuff. And I think you guys were talking about it, and I was like going and trying to look at the book, and I was like, should I get this or not, or whatever. So yeah, so very cool.
Yep.
All right, there are some links in the chat for that book too. Oh, all right, here we go. Kirby, thank you, Kirby. Dude, Kirby is like our tipper king. He's just $50. Yeah. Thank you so much, Kirby. That's going toward Capital Area Humane Society. As a reminder, all tips go toward Capital Area Humane Society right now. We're trying to raise $500 for them. There should be a link down below in the chat if you're interested in helping out. And we also have, we're gonna say L Boy because I can't pronounce that screen name. Thank you for the $5 tip. I appreciate that. And looks like they have a question as well. In your opinion, when should I punish players in combat? RPing or their luck? I do want them to have fun, but also want them to understand that sometimes the dice are not always on their side if they roll poorly a lot. So
never.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I was just gonna say, never punish players. Punish characters, especially if it's just for bad dice rolls. Never deliberately punish a player. If they're doing something you don't like, talk to them about it. Don't punish them in game about it. That's just bad. That's bad behavior. But I think that though it's meant as more of a hopefully it's not meant that way, and it's meant more as a, if they're rolling crappy, should I make things worse? I don't know. But while Luke talks, I'll reread the question.
Yeah, so that's the wrong button. That question's not in our spreadsheet either, moderators. Could we get that in there with a timestamp, please? I would appreciate that. I was trying to find it and I couldn't find it. Yeah, I would. I mean, punishing characters, like, you don't need to. Like, I don't know why you would punish characters. Like, if the dice are not on their side and the dice go poorly, that's the punishment. Like, and I don't even like the word punishment. Let's say consequences. Those are the consequences, because punishment implies that they did something bad, probably intentionally, and you're trying to teach them a lesson, and that just doesn't fit, I don't think, in Dungeon D&D. It's like you're not like gonna punish them for doing something bad or teaching them a lesson on something. If they made a bad decision, there might be consequences, but we're not punishing them. And in the case of dice rolls, if the dice roll poorly, that is the consequence in and of itself. If you're trying to do X, Y, and Z, and you roll poorly and you fail, and then there are bad things happen as a result, it's not a punishment. That's just consequences. That's just called running a good game, and having there be, things that cause effects in the game, and sometimes those effects aren't desirable, so it's definitely, and that's just, you don't even have to do anything. The dice will determine that, when there's a consequence. But that's the case of dice. Sometimes things are going to happen where there are no dice involved. You could simply there could be a social interaction, and the player's character says the wrong thing to the king. Let's pretend they're in front of the king. And some players like to be a little, I don't know, not serious in their interactions. And they will say things to people of power that they shouldn't say.
and that could have severe consequences. The king might just be like, oh, you're going to talk to me that way? Guards, just take him away. Put him in the jails for a while. You know, I mean, but that's not punishing them. That's just consequences. We're role playing. You say that to the king, bad things are going to happen. You know, so.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Consequences should be a thing. I prefer consequences to be about player choices and not bad die rolls, if at all possible. I have one player who his name is Billy. He is famously terrible with his die rolls. So much so that players, if one of his dice stumbles into another player's dice, they will take it and throw it away as quickly as possible, so that it doesn't corrupt their dice. He's not allowed to touch other people's dice. Nothing. It's so permeated through my life that when my children were learning to play D&D, my oldest daughter rolled several really bad rolls and several ones one night and was almost crying and said, I don't want to be the Billy. So I try as often as possible to fail forward if it's dice rolls. If you don't understand what fail forward means, watch the first 7 minutes of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Every time Indy fails, it gives him an opportunity to try something else. His failures are never absolute. So I try to fail forward as much as possible if it's a dice roll thing. Sometimes the dice just tell their story and you got to live with it. But I like consequences that create more story, create more adventure. So, you know, if you have a bad day and the hag gets away, bring that hag back. You know, make that hag a recurring villain. Use whatever those consequences are to spawn more adventures and more stuff, because that shows the players that consequences are real, but also shows them that failing doesn't necessarily mean the game is less fun.
Yeah, that's very good. Sometimes you fail and you fail though. You know, like if you're trying to attack something in combat and you miss, dude. Like that's it. Try it. Better luck next time. You know. But so I think there are definitely situations where failing forward and you try to work with that and keep things rolling and make it more interesting as a result. And there are other cases where no, you just failed. You lost. You know, your character is dead. I'm sorry. That's life. But the failing forward is, hey, maybe they'll resurrect you. Maybe finally the druid will use reincarnate and we'll get something really cool. You know, my players actually, they have a do not reincarnate wristband that their characters wear. You know, because there are some players who do not want their characters to be reincarnated ever because, you know, it screws up their build basically is the reason. You know, there are other players who are like, yeah, that's great. That makes things more fun. In my Sword Coast Guard game, we had a player's character get reincarnated as a turtle. And oh my gosh, it was one of the most awesome game moments ever. And then the resulting play of him like retreating into his shell constantly because he was terrified. It was just amazing, you know. But some players don't want that. But yeah, you definitely there's a time and a place for failing forward. Also a time and a place just to say sorry, you failed. It's over. Yeah. So
yeah, fail forward on big consequences. You know, like the villain getting away. You know, use that in the future, but things like missed attack rolls and that kind of stuff, I mean, it's part of the game, dude.
Yeah, it's just, it's life. It's what happens. All right, let's take Melchior Wiseman wants to know if all my cats are microchipped. No, 3 of them are microchipped because they used to be outside all the time and I didn't want to lose them. The rest are terrified to go outside, so I have no concerns about that. Let's hit this one right here. Peak D&D, what's up? How do you feel about the ship or sea mechanics from the Ghosts of Salt Marsh module, if you've read it? I mean, I haven't really read it. I glanced at the back of it and I saw that there were mechanics for it.
I have run it.
Yeah.
I have run Ghosts of Salt Marsh. I am a huge fan of tall ships and old ships. I believe that the fact that I can't stream Horatio Hornblower on any of my streaming services is a federal crime and should be corrected. They do their best. They're not terrible, but they're not great. They're great guidelines, and I ended up winging a lot of it, but also using a lot of it as a basis, like who the officers should be and what skills they should use in order to make the ship work, how many crew you should have on a given ship, because a lot of that stuff is actually pretty well researched. But it's a lot. I mean, they are what they are. They're not perfect, but they're not bad. I like them, but I also love ships. So, I know a lot about that stuff, so it's very easy for me to wing it too if something doesn't work well. That doesn't mean that they don't necessarily work well. It means that they didn't work well enough for me as a person who loves tall ships and ship combat. But for me, with ship combat, one of the things I don't like ship combat in D&D mainly because the PCs aren't using their stuff.
Yeah.
They're firing a cannon or firing a ballista, and they're not using their stuff. So when I do ship combat, I try to get the ships close together as quickly as possible so the NPCs can keep shooting at each other while the PCs jump over onto their ship and kill stuff.
Yeah.
Because that's more what I want out of the game from that type of thing. I love watching ship combat. I would watch the entire Horatio Hornblower series with Ewan Griffith like every day if I owned it. It's wonderful, but I also, it doesn't just because it's good entertainment doesn't mean it's good D&D.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. That's so true. I think the same statement could be made about like watching D&D shows and thinking that if you do the same thing that they do on shows, that will translate well into your D&D game, which is very interesting because you and I had a conversation, I think on Discord, about a popular D&D show where the Dungeon Master literally had the character, a player's character, not get introduced into the campaign for several game sessions because of story reasons. They wanted to have their character come into the story at just the right point. What were the details around that? Do you remember?
It was we were talking a little bit about the new season of Critical Role and Travis Willingham's character, but there was a lot of agreement in that he was willing to sit out because he wanted his character to come in later. Okay. The one that bugged me was in the previous campaign, one of the players, Talison's character died. Okay. Molly Mock died, and they had no way of bringing him back. They were too low level. And he made a new character. And in the next game session, he was in the studio with his character sheet ready to play. Yeah. And Matt, who I love Matt Mercer. I think he's a great DM. He does some things that I don't agree with, but he's a great DM in general. He gave the players were looking for adventure hooks in this town, and he gave them adventure hooks, and one of the adventure hooks was to go visit Talison's new character. So that he could join the party. And they chose not to take that adventure hook. So
why would the players the players know the purpose of that adventure hook?
Well, they didn't, because they didn't know his new character.
Oh, because so out of character they didn't know what it was.
Yeah, the Critical Role players don't always share their character information because they like to reveal that in game for drama. Okay. Well, so that session was like 5 hours that he sat there. And then the next week, he came back into the studio with his character sheet and his dice and everything, and was sitting on the sidelines. Yeah. And I think the next session was like 4.5 hours, and they didn't go to meet his character until like 2 hours into the episode. Yeah. So that's 7 hours that player could have been playing the game, that they were just sitting on the sidelines. Now, they're okay with it because it's a show. It's not a game. Yeah. But that's a bad example for people in their home games. Right. Like one of the other things that Matt does that I don't like, as a DM, I don't like it, is he tells his players how they're feeling sometimes. He'll tell them that they're feeling trepidation, or that their nerves are on edge because they're walking through this tunnel or something. And I'm like, to me, that's stealing agency from the players. Yeah. You don't tell the players how they're feeling. You let the players decide how they're feeling. And does that make him a bad DM? No, he is an amazing storyteller. He's a great DM. His players have a lot of fun in the game. They enjoy the crap out of it, and they play in their style. But that style doesn't fit everybody. And much like what you were getting to, a good movie may not make good D&D.
Right.
D&D doesn't always make good entertainment, and it certainly doesn't make a good example of how you should play at your table.
Right, and I think what it drives at too is that that's a D&D show, and the purpose is to primarily entertain the viewers. When you as a dungeon master are running a D&D game at your table, your purpose is to primarily entertain your players and you, the dungeon master. And so the purposes of a D&D show and a D&D game are completely different, and there'll be very vocal people, especially on Twitter, who'll be like, oh, that's not what's going on at all. That's his own private personal game, and he's just revealing it for all of you to watch, and I'm like, okay, no, they're professional actors and voice performers. They're putting on a show for the audience. It's very, very clear that they're doing that. You cannot say that they're not doing that, and you can't take that example literally for how you should do things in your own game, unless of course you're on Twitter or Twitch, I should say, and you're trying to be the next Critical Role, because there are tons of those that are just basically my classic thing I'll say about those games is you don't even know it's D&D, because it's all just social interactions and a little bit of exploration and talking, and you almost never see combat, you never see miniatures, you never see grids, anything. It's just talking and talking and talking, and they're acting, they got costumes, a lot of them, they're making their voices and stuff, and they're just all trying to put on a good show, but if it didn't say D&D, you might not even know it was D&D by what they're doing.
I've heard of DMs that are Critical Role fans who will, like, when their players sit down for a long rest, they'll pick out one of the players and, like, is there anybody you would like to talk to, or is there anything you would like to do on this long rest? Just get to the end of the long rest, the players just want their stuff back, you know. But when Critical Role first started, these guys have been playing together for 5 years at a home game. They didn't have a regular game. They played as often as they could get together because they were all very busy people. And Felicia Day knew Ashley Johnson, and they were talking, and Ashley was talking about her home game with all these voice actors. And Felicia Day said, hey, do you want to do it on Geek and Sundry as a show? You'd play every week, and we'd see if people want to watch it. Of course, right after that, Ashley Johnson got a job on Blind Spot in New York City and ended up actually not being on the show for the most part. It was just her other friends. But, I mean, they weren't even sure if they wanted to do it at first, because they didn't think anybody would want to watch it.
Yeah.
But the more popular it became, the less a D&D game it became, and the more a D&D show it became.
Yeah.
I tell people, if you want to watch a real D&D game, and I'm not saying this because they're here, and I'm not saying it as a deliberate plug. If you want to watch a real D&D game, watch Peak D&D, because these guys are not playing the game to entertain you. They are playing the game to entertain themselves, and they just happen to be entertaining. They do some incredibly stupid things. I make jokes about it in their comments all the time, about them forgetting to buy healing potions or forgetting to take long rests, because that's what players do. They do stupid things. That's fun. Whereas in Critical Role, these guys are professional actors, and they know their characters really well because they play them every week as part of a show. Matt is a professional actor, but has been playing D&D for a very long time. So, you got to take that kind of thing with a grain of salt and recognize that it's meant to be entertainment, not an example of how you should play at home.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. But there are people that don't get that, and they think that, and then they try to emulate it, and then they might be shocked when it doesn't work super well, because it doesn't translate super well to the game. And the classic example is what we originally started off with, is the character who doesn't get introduced for a game session plus, and the player is sitting there twiddling their thumbs. Now, in the case of this show, like that player is showing up, they're still getting their paycheck, they're still hanging out with their friends, and it's like, okay, I'm not getting to play, but that's okay, because my primary purpose in coming here is not to play the game, it's to be part of the show.
and I'm also getting a decent paycheck, so I'm just going to be like, yeah, whatever, this is the way it goes. That's life, But if you're a player in an actual D&D game and you show up and an entire game session, your character doesn't get introduced, why did I even come? Good gravy.
Yeah.
And then the next session, you wait a couple hours to get introduced. It's like, hello, I want to play the game. Like I've literally had players that got upset that like their character died or something in the first little bit of the game, and they're just like, you know what, I might as well just pack up and go home because I'm not going to play the game today. You know what I mean? Because it's going to take you to the next session or two to even resurrect me. You know what I mean? So I might as well not even be here. It's like the point is that, I'm not saying that necessarily that reaction is a good reaction, but the point is that people show up to play the game, not to sit there and watch other people play the game, and so you want to consider that in your own games, so.
If you want a story reason for a character to join the game, come up with it quickly and introduce the character quickly. I remember when I joined Zack's game, when I joined Goliath Cleric's game, it was already in progress and they were already in a dungeon. So the next room they walked in, my character was tied to a grate on the floor because I had come down here looking for adventure and had gotten overwhelmed and tied to a grate. And boom, they found me. There was a story reason for me being there. Everybody's happy.
Yeah.
Just do it fast and don't be so married to verisimilitude that you are making a player wait for hours and hours to play a game. They came to play.
Yeah, gameplay trumps story. Like, get them in the game, get them playing the game so they're having fun. Your precious story can deviate a little bit. When I first joined Zack's game, you guys were all in some extra dimensional space and there was a doorway into it. And then the first thing he's like, oh yeah, you guys noticed somebody else walked through the doorway, and that was me. And then boom, I'm in the game. And I did some stupid stuff and I knocked some guards out that I shouldn't have, and there was some fun stuff that happened, But the point is, he got us into the game very quickly, and that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
I wanted to play the game. That's why I showed up. All right, we're going to do a quick plug here for the sponsor of today's giveaway, Arcweave. Let me get this guy going right there. The nice, beautiful video. So Arcweave basically, and by the way, we are doing a giveaway as well, and the winner of the giveaway tonight is going to get a 1-year pro subscription to Arcweave. There's a link down below where you can get in on the giveaway. Arcweave is a web-based program where you can basically design a D&D campaign. It helps you do that monumental task. You can interweave plot lines and adventures, design NPCs, plot hooks. It's all visually based, so you can visualize your campaign's narrative flow. You can design your adventures, your storyline, your plots, subplots, adventures, monsters, all these types of things. You can add these details and create visual references for like magic items, NPCs, and stuff like that. It has organization features such as boards and folders to keep your diagrams and your notes organized as well. You could also collaborate real time with, say, co-dungeon masters or other game designers. One of my team members, Goliath Cleric, who's in the chat right now, I believe, liked it so much when I asked him to evaluate it, because we only recommend things on our channel that are actually high quality that we think will be of use to you guys. When he was evaluating it, he's like, Luke, this is so good that I'm going to start using it. And now he's using it when he's designing stuff for Lair magazine. So very cool program. You can check it out, link below, and then obviously sign up for the giveaway as well, because somebody's going to win a 1-year pro subscription to Arcweave. And then we'll transition back to here, and beautiful. Let's hit some more questions. Do you see a juicy one, dude?
We have 3 member questions, one of which is Goliath Cleric trolling me, and we have a couple of we have a couple of other good questions.
Okay, cool. Let's do it. Get the troll one first.
I'm going to do the troll one first. Goliath Cleric asks, how obviously bad should you make something look to actually get characters to not dump their heads in it? Okay, so here's my answer to that question. If you put something in front of me that is obviously a bad idea, I am going to do it. Okay, so there you go. One question answered very quickly.
Well, hold on, but the context there is that there was a river, the River Styx. That was obviously the river. It was literally called the River Styx, and we knew what it was, that it floated to the Nine Hells, and we
didn't know that yet. We did not know that yet. It was a rainbow-colored river that sparkled with rainbow colors. That's all we were told at that point.
No, an NPC literally told us that people go into it, and then bad things happen. They lose their souls or something. I don't know what it was, but we all knew that it was bad. And the very first thing, dude, you were there. The very first thing.
Nope.
You weren't there? Okay, whatever.
When we landed on that island,
okay,
Goliath described what was going on in the distance, and what was going on there, and the NPCs had mentioned that there was something really bad on this mountain. So I said, in game, Crunch keeps walking. There's something bad. There's some adventure in that direction. Crunch continues walking in that direction. So by the time you guys found out that it was connected to the River Styx, I was already at the river, hundreds of feet away from you.
That's fair.
So I never heard the conversation about how people went into that river and never came out of it.
Okay, fine. And then you ducked your head in it, and then bad things happened. But I will say this, like, as a dungeon master, I appreciate the crap out of players who do that sort of thing, because that's the sort of player that gets interesting stuff happening, the shakers and movers, the player that opens the door instead of standing on the other side. Oh, what's behind it? We're afraid, and that's what makes the game fun. So I appreciate that stuff.
But yeah, I will, if you put a bad idea in front of me and there's nobody there to stop me, I will do that bad idea.
Yeah,
because that is what makes the game fun for me.
I do the similar sort of thing.
I've noticed.
I've had so many dumb things that I've done, and I'm surprised my character is still alive. All right, let's hit the next one in the row. Member question. This is from Demo Boy. How do I run Stalker Modern Survival Horror Style campaign in 5th edition? Any advice on how to prepare such a campaign? So this is probably going to mimic the advice you gave before, Ed, which was and this was specifically for a Mafia style game, immerse yourself in that content, books about it, movies about it, things like that, get it in your head, and then, help those tropes and that genre inform you as you design your game.
Yep.
So
I will say that I ran one recently. I ran a survival horror one-shot recently. The bad guys have to be scary. They have to be bigger and badder than your players, or at least they have to look like they're bigger and badder than your players. I also will go so far as to say that I don't think that a survival horror campaign would be a very long campaign, because survival horror will wear on people very quickly, but it makes a great adventure.
Yeah, interesting. And when we say survival horror, is that like where there's a kind of like those, what are those movies with the guy in the white mask who shows up with the knife to kill people? Scream or something?
It's kind of slasher. Yeah, it's kind of slasher movies like Scream, and Nightmare on Elm Street, that kind of stuff. But it's it can also be things like Rime of the Frost Maiden is survival horror.
Okay.
Because you're in a terrible environment that can kill you. The movie Alive, about a group that crashes in the Himalayas with their plane and ends up eating each other because they're so hungry. That's also survival horror. It's also body horror, but in survival horror, the thing that makes it work is that whatever it is you're trying to survive from is not the bad guy, it's the consequence of failure, because they are going to kill you if you fail. So the main villain, whoever it is, has to be so overwhelmingly powerful that you're not going to kill it. You need to survive it somehow, or find a way to put it out of commission, but not necessarily kill it. So, I mean, in slasher movies, they almost always kill the bad guy and then he comes back for the next sequel anyway.
Yeah.
But true survival horror, in the truest sense of survival horror, there is no way to survive unless you escape it.
Yeah.
So in order to do that, you have to have an overwhelming foe. At least the boss has to be overwhelming. The minions can be fightable, but they should also be tough. You should feel like every combat you go into is going to kill you. You should never have time for a short or long rest. You should not get resources back. It should be all about resource management. if they try to take a short rest, they should get jumped immediately by something, because you want to make it feel like every second of that game you are going to die if you don't do something.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, I see it now that you describe it a little bit better for me, I immediately see why they would probably make a very bad campaign. Because imagine a campaign where you never actually have true victory. You're never actually like defeating the monster or anything like that. Like, you're always just one step ahead at best, trying to not die, you know. And that would definitely wear on you psychologically, I think. And it also just kind of, part of the premise of a lot of D&D games, I feel, is that you're heroes. You're almost like superheroes. You're doing amazing, you know, awesome, cool stuff, you know. And I think that's something that a lot of people like. And so maybe one adventure, trying to survive, shake things up, have a different style of adventure could be fun. But if it's the whole campaign, that's gonna wear on you, and yeah, that might not be the game for everybody. It also, as you were describing that, that description reminded me a lot of the Call of Cthulhu one shots that I've ran. Except that there's, in the Call of Cthulhu, at least the ones that I've played and as a player, there's a very strong element of investigation in like the first two-thirds of it, where you're poking around, investigating, discovering things, and uncovering secrets and mysteries. And then there's usually a turning point where it turns into survival horror, because you find what that secret is, usually some horrific monster, and then that horrific monster is coming after you, and it's mostly unbeatable, and you're really just trying to survive. And if you get into combat with it, you're probably going to die pretty quickly. So yeah, feels like that's.
I mean, even Curse of Strahd, which is Gothic horror, you know, when you win, you still lose somehow. Every victory seems to have a consequence, but at the end of the adventure, you're supposed to win. I mean, you kill Strahd and you win. And if you don't kill Strahd, well, that sucks. Move on to the next adventure. But even then, your victories are costly. But ultimately, by the end of that campaign, and it's a short campaign to begin with, you're going to win. So there is that payoff in the end. With survival horror, there should never be that payoff in the end where you beat the bad guy. You should escape the bad guy.
Yeah, I think the one thing you're getting wrong there, dude, is that in Curse of Strahd, if you lose, you don't have to move on to the next campaign, because remember, there is unlimited replayability with Curse of Strahd, because the randomized nature of where the magic items end up and where Strahd starts in the castle. Because you randomize those elements, there's unlimited replayability with that, and a new game experience every single time.
You're not going to get me to rant. You can try all you want. I'm not going to do it.
I think I just covered it. Yeah.
All right. Well, in chat, there's a question. I'm going to totally steal it out of chat. I'm going to do a Luke. I'm going to do the thing that I hate it when you do when I'm modding.
Oh, you see why I do it? You see why I do it, though? Listooge guy, boy, I don't know how to pronounce that, said, question, party of elves, should taking a full rest only be 4 hours instead of 8 hours? Rules as intended, yes. Rules as intended, elves, a party that only has to trance, that can finish a long rest in 4 hours. That was Jeremy Crawford's official statement. Here's my official statement. If elves can complete an entire long rest in over 4 hours, elves should rule the world. Because while everybody else is sleeping, they're taking over, they're raiding people's cities and taking over continents. And if you're going to play that rules as intended, and elves only need 4 hours to get a full long rest, then elves should rule the world. And if they don't, you're not playing it in accordance to their racial abilities. But Ed, I think you're forgetting that elves are good, right? They're not evil.
That's true. Even the drow.
Yeah, they're all really good. They're just gonna, like, you know, give you puppies and kittens and like, you know, fluffy bunnies and stuff. So, yeah.
Yep. Thinking about it tactically from a military perspective, if drow elves, let's pretend drow are evil. If drow elves can get a long rest in 4 hours and nobody else in the Underdark can, drow should completely dominate the Underdark.
I think there's something in the lore, maybe it's the newer lore or something, that drow don't get the meditation thing that, like, at least in the books you read, like the books that I read from like Salvatore and stuff, the drow just sleep. They don't meditate. Whereas the surface elves,
they do the meditation thing. So I think there was something in the lore where when the drow fractured from their brethren, for whatever reason, they stopped the meditation thing and they just had normal rest. But I'm not too super clear on that. It's mostly based on my reading of the books. But
well, in second edition, where those books originated, regular elves didn't transfer for hours. They just went into reverie. They still needed to take the same amount of time, but they were never fully unconscious.
Okay.
Because they were remembering things, but they were still aware of their environment.
Yeah.
And drow could not do that. But trance was introduced by Wizards of the Coast after they took over D&D. It's not something that was in the older editions where those books originated.
Okay.
So I think that Salvatore still holds on to the established canon from when the book started. So
okay, interesting. All right, let's see what else we got going on here. By the way, lots of people were very sad that you didn't rant. Penguin Butt was sad. Now, I just want to say, Ed, you know, if you make Penguin Butt sad, can you imagine what she's gonna do to your deadlines, dude?
Yeah, I already know. But no, you rant. That's your thing. I don't want to steal your thing, man.
Oh, okay. Okay. See, that's okay.
Yeah.
You don't want to steal my thunder. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you can't post a rant video of me ranting because I'm not. It's your channel, so
yeah. But like that'll be the title of the video. Guest DM Lair goes crazy on stream. Watch. Woo! I'll have like you with like steam coming out of your ears or something.
Yeah, that'd be great. You'd have to get a screenshot of me without my headphones on, which probably isn't ever going to happen because I don't like my ears.
Oh yeah. I hate wearing headphones. So we had a request to show Chloe or Zoe actually on the channel. So this is our Chihuahua. She was sleeping over here and somebody in chat was like, show us the dog. So now I'm showing you the dog and I had to wake her up. So,
you made Luke wake that poor baby up. Just remember that.
She's been over here sleeping most of the day, so it's
Okay, so we have one more current member question. It's from Goliath Cleric again, and I think it's a good question. What is your opinion on a failed knowledge check causing the character to recall or notice the wrong information rather than just not know or notice? So I read it, so you have to go first.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm totally fine with somebody misremembering something and having the wrong information. And I think the reason that I'm fine with that is because I do that all the time. Like that's something, I have a bad memory, and so when I'm thinking about something, I'll frequently misremember something. My wife, well, you know, this is interesting. My wife will always seems to have a really good memory, and she'll say that it was this way, and I'll think it was a different way. And I'm never really quite sure if it's because I'm misremembering or if she's just trying to paint the narrative the way that works out best for her. But I totally misremember stuff all the time, and so I don't think that that's an issue whatsoever. And if it makes for interesting gameplay and you're going in a good direction with it and it makes things more fun and interesting, then I don't think there's any harm in it, you know, of having a misremembrance about something. All right,
I agree. My one thing that I will add to it really is that for me it also depends on how badly they roll. If a character misses something by like 1 or 2 points, I'm not going to give them misinformation. If they miss something by 5 points, or I might give them some information that's wrong but not necessarily detrimental. If they really, really miss by a lot of times I will make it so wrong that the entire table is laughing at how bad their information is. And most of my players are good enough role players that they'll go with that information anyway and do the stupid thing because that's what they think is real. But normally it scales based on how badly they roll.
Yeah. I do the same thing. I'm only going to give them bad information if it's like really low. Otherwise, they just don't know or something. Yeah.
Yeah. My favorite thing to say is you didn't pay attention in that class. So.
Yeah. Oh, so we're using the Strixhaven rules.
Yeah. It's all Strixhaven from now on.
Just Strixhaven, baby. Let's do it. Let's do it, man.
Coffee shop adventures.
Coffee. Well, no, but you have class. You have to do homework. You know, there's romance rules and stuff like that. You know, so
and there's an entire adventure about a bad day working at Starbucks. So.
Really?
Yep. On D&D Beyond, there's a free adventure that you can get where you are working at a coffee shop when the manager has a bad day and leaves, and you have to run the coffee shop until the end of your shift.
Wait. What game are we talking about?
D&D.
What?
Strixhaven.
That's D&D?
On D&D Beyond.
When did that
free adventure?
When did that become D&D? That's like Sims 4 or something, dude.
Yep. There's a free adventure where you have to run a coffee shop on a bad day because your boss left you in charge, and you have to get through the end of the shift while all these terrible things happen while you're working at the coffee shop.
Yeah, but that's why it's free. Like the actual adventures in Strixhaven got to be better than that, right?
I wouldn't know because Wizards of the Coast saved me $50 by making that book instead of one that I wanted.
Same here. I do not. I don't own the book. I don't own the book at all. I got an email requesting me to do a sponsored video on Strixhaven, and my first thought when I got that video was, I don't even own the book. Like, I heard such bad things about it. I never bought the book. You know what I mean? And so ultimately, obviously, I turned that down. I think other people took them up on that offer and made entire dedicated videos about Strixhaven, plugging it and stuff. But yeah, I definitely turned that one down. I was like, yeah, and it's part of an integrity thing too. Like, I only do sponsored videos on things that I enjoy and that I think people will find useful. And so I couldn't say yes to that anyway. Which is why, you know, in the deputy chat, I'll always be like, hey guys, can you take a look at this product? Tell me if it's any good.
Okay. We got another good question. I'm going all the way to the top.
Okay.
Because sometimes we go to the bottom, we don't go back to the top. Deadpool 2323. How much of a character's backstory do you put into your campaign?
Awesome. I cherry pick stuff. I'll go through their backstory, assuming the player creates a backstory. I'll go through there and I will look for things that I can use. Do they have a missing sister that they don't know where they are? Okay, I might do something there. Did they have a falling out with their father? And, you know, okay, I might do something with that. Were they exiled from their city? Oh, okay. Is there a thieves guild that's trying to hunt them down and looking for them? Oh, okay. So I'll go through and I'll comb and I'll find things that I can use and I can introduce as side character arcs in my games that my players can go on together as a group. That would be like a separate adventure, or maybe just little tiny one-off encounters that will happen. So I'll definitely go through there. I'll cherry pick anything that seems interesting, anything that I think that can be incorporated into the game. It doesn't necessarily become part of the main campaign arc, but it will become a little side character arc that might happen. Now, some backstories are better than others in regards to how much you can actually take out of it. I've read backstories before where I was just like, I don't know what I can even do with this. Like, there's nothing in there for me to take and use. It's just kind of, and it's not because it's a bad backstory. It's just that it didn't give me stuff that I kind of was looking for that I could use, you know. And then I've read other backstories where it was just like, holy crap, there's so much in here that I could do, you know. So, but yeah, it really just depends on the backstory, what's in it, but it's cherry picking the things that I find interesting and it's also stuff that I think my players would find interesting as well. Because part of pulling stuff from the backstory and including it in your game is that the player who wrote that backstory, you want them to be like, oh, cool, that's from my backstory. Oh, and then they get excited about it, you know? And so you want to elicit that sort of reaction and those feelings from your players as well.
My answer is also it depends, but in a slightly different way. If I have an idea for the campaign ahead of time, I will weave the backstories in as much as I can to make them work. Sometimes I'll tie them into my ideas. Sometimes I'll make them side plots. I can normally find at least one or two things in my players' backstories that can be tied into the main plot. If I don't have an idea, I will tell my characters to make backstories, and I'll base the plot on their backstories. Recently, I started a campaign, and I told them every backstory has to have one unresolved mystery. It has to have one person who is an enemy that is unresolved. It has to have one person that you care about enough that you would go out of your way to help them. one thing that you truly fear, and one thing that you really care about. And and I was planning on making the campaign out of their backstories. I was going to weave them all together however I could. As it happened, two of them had warrior brothers who had disappeared under mysterious circumstances, and one of them had a warrior father who disappeared under mysterious circumstances. So that became the basis for my entire campaign. That warriors, that great warriors from all over the world were disappearing under mysterious circumstances, and what was really going on. And that's the whole campaign. And the fourth player, I found something from he's playing a Ganassi, and he's a barbarian, and his father was killed and his heart was taken. The assassin took his father's heart, and he's an Earth Ganassi. So what I did was I had an assassin stole his heart because it was a component in a branding iron that was used to turn the warriors that are being kidnapped into some sort of monster. So I managed to tie all four of those campaign elements together in order to make the campaign from their backstories. But that's something I did because I know all those players make great backstories. They all really want to get into their backstories. So I specifically said, I'm going into this campaign with no ideas until I get your backstories.
Cool.
So it really depends.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I've never thought of doing that before. That's just really cool. All right, here's a question. Penguin Butt says, I heard of a house rule where a certain number of nat 20s would gain a permanent bonus on that check. What do you think of that? I think that is absolutely ridiculously stupid. I would never do that because in 5th edition, especially, you have bounded accuracy. You know, once you start to get a +1, +2, +3, that affects things a lot. And it's just a matter of time before you roll a certain number of nat 20s on an ability check, you know, and so it's always going to happen. And so you're introducing a massive imbalance in the game. So I would never do that. So that's my answer.
That sounds to me like somebody borrowed a mechanic from another game that they liked. There are a lot of games out there that are skill-based games where the more you use a skill, the better, the faster it improves.
Yeah.
That is fantastic for skill-based games because the system is built that way. But for a game with bounded accuracy, where skills are only supposed to get so high, I mean, even what's the thing rogues get? Expertise.
Yeah.
Even expertise gets outrageous sometimes. If you have, you can take a character. There's another class that gets it too. It might be bards. But if you play a character with a high strength, let's say you decide to play a mountain dwarf bard for some reason, and you're playing like Path of Valor where you need strength, or Path of Swords where you need blades where you need strengths. You take expertise in athletics, and by 10th level, there is no one you cannot grapple. You can grapple like ancient red dragons because your athletic skill is so insanely high.
Yeah.
So even that mechanic breaks the game in some places. So the idea of just giving people random bonuses because they roll good a lot, that just seems to that seems outside of what works for 5th edition.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that would reach the point where it's totally broken for sure. Absolutely. All right, we are getting right toward the end of the live stream, so we're going to give folks a last chance here to sign up for our giveaway. We're giving away a 1-year pro subscription to Arcweave. It is a online tool you can use to help plan out your D&D campaigns, make your life easier and more organized when you're running games for your players. So there's a link down below. My moderators will throw it down there for the giveaway. Go in there and sign up. This is your last chance, and then we're going to draw a winner to that. We just got a super chat in, so let's hit that really quick. Give people time to sign up for the giveaway. Anata says, oh, and thank you for the $5 super chat. I appreciate that. How long is the waiting list to join a game Ed is running? Look at that, Ed. They're not asking about my games. They're asking about your games. You did something right in this live stream. How does someone get a hold of Ed to join a game? Pardon my boldness. Ed, it sounds like you need to start like a Patreon or something that has like different tiers for playing games with you, man. You're gonna make some money here.
I was going to say join Luke's Patreon, because at a certain level you get a chance to play games with Luke, and I have volunteered to run some of those games so that he gets to play in them. Not all of them, but some of them. So there's a chance that you could do it that way. as far as the waiting list to join my games, it's actually pretty long. I do have a waiting list, and
nice.
it's going to be years before if I ever get to the end of that waiting list. I appreciate your boldness, because it makes it sound like you like what I've been talking about, and that makes me feel good, because I was really nervous about doing this today.
Oh yeah.
But the best way to do it is Luke's Patreon. I am not well enough known that I could start my own Patreon to run games, and I don't run open games on Roll20, because I run 4 regular games that are every other week. I also play in a game that's every other week, and I'm getting ready this summer to start a game for my kids again. So I have no time to do a Patreon for games.
That would be in addition to your day job and writing and editing and all the stuff you do for Lair magazine. Yeah.
Yep. I basically have 3 full-time jobs, one of which pays nothing, and that's DMing. One of which pays in its own way, working for the magazine, and one of which actually keeps my children fed and my house purchased. So I just don't have time to be a pro DM. I feel great for people who can do it. I mean, make some money at it if you can. I'm sure that I could be a pro DM, because I've been told that I run great games, and I hope I do, because I want my players to have fun. But I just don't have the time to do it.
Look at that. Nixit says it sounds like Ed never sleeps.
I do have insomnia. But yeah, Peak D&D, I've been talking to Max. I don't know if this is Max. I'm running a game for you guys at LairCon 2022, so that's how long your waiting list is, October.
That's awesome. Yeah. Oh, by the way, Simpaticos, I just want to let you know, I saw your comment a while back, and you said that I had an ugly dog. So I just want you to know that I saw your comment, and in our next Curse of Strahd game, something very wonderful is going to happen to Meridon. So just want to let you know, dude, that was not missed. So, all right, we'll draw our giveaway here. And there are probably links down there for joining my Patreon if you'd like to. You get Lair magazine, which Ed works on. Lots of cool resources you can use in your game. And I do run D&D for my patrons every month. And it's a D&D game, and the players are chosen from my patrons. And in February, in just a few weeks here, Ed is going to be running the game for us. And so I'm looking forward to that. It's always fun to be a player. And Ed's games are really good too, by the way. So, all right. And Kirby, thank you, dude, for the $25, man. Really appreciate that. Tipping for the Capital Area Humane Society. I appreciate that, dude. We're almost at $100, I think, for the charity. So sweet. Very cool. All right, let's do our giveaway. We gotta pull a giveaway winner here and see who won stuff. Oh, here we go. All right, draw winners. Ooh, draw winners. All right, here we go.
Thank you, Ambers, and thanks, Luke, for saying that. I know you believe it, but I have imposter syndrome, so I always have a hard time accepting compliments. It's when people tell me I run good games.
And I usually get bored in a lot of people's D&D games. So for me to tell you it's a good game, it's a good game.
Thanks.
Okay, here we go. It looks like our winner is. I gotta find his screen name, because I don't want to. What is his D&D screen name? Oh, it's just Benjamin Rainey. Benjamin Rainey. I don't know if you're here, dude, but you have won the giveaway. I will be sending you an email with information on how you can get your 1-year pro subscription to Arcweave, dude. So you'll see that tonight or tomorrow or something like that. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up our Q&A. We'll be back next week, probably on Wednesday, I believe, with some more Q&A. Well, Ed won't be.
Just Luke. I don't know what side you're on. Just Luke.
Just Luke. So, Ed, thank you so much for coming on. This is really cool. We had some really good conversations, talking about some stuff, and I really deeply appreciate your thoughts and insights, especially in the Thaco the Clown conversation, because you brought some points up on some perspectives there that I hadn't considered
in the whole topic. So I really appreciate that. It's always cool. So,
If you want to have me on another live stream, there's an interview you're doing coming up, and I would totally geek out to second share you on that live stream.
Yeah, I haven't gotten any answers to that potential interview yet. Like I sent the email and stuff, and I've gotten no responses, which is understandable. We were talking about oh gosh, the name is slipping me now, dude.
Tracy Hickman.
Thank you. Yes. So I did a video on the Hickman Revolution, and he left some comments on it, and he was like, hey, maybe we could do an interview. And I was like, hey, yeah, that'd be great. And I sent him an email, and I haven't got a response yet. And you know what? In all honesty, like, that dude has got to be crazy busy. And I totally get that, because I'm crazy busy. So from one crazy busy dude to another, I totally understand that. But, maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. It'll be totally cool. But yeah, so...
Just keep me in mind. I'll second share you on that one. I'll try not to nerd out too much. And I have one thing more to say before you sign off, and that is buy Lair magazine. It's awesome. Okay.
Yes, it is.
I'm done.
It's very, very awesome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful Friday evening, and we'll see you later. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Don't go anywhere, Ed.
I'm not.
I gotta push my stop buttons in stream. There we go. And I gotta push